darkness there, and nothing more. To that darkness peering, long I stood there, wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. So was broken, and the stillness gave no token, and the only word there spoken was the whispered word Lenore. This an angel whispered, the echoed word Lenore. Merely this, and nothing more. So returning, all my soul within me burning, returning, so louder than before. Said, this is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what thereat is. Oh, the mic works. Let me check one time. Oh, it is wrong. Fucking A. Can't get it right today. Saintly raven of
1 second delay is not that bad. I don't think it was worth restarting for a 1 second delay. But, perched and sat, and nothing more.
Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad
fancy into smiling.
By the grave and stern decorum of the countenance it wore. Though thy crest be
shorn and shaven, thou art said, art sure no craven, ghastly, grim, and ancient raven from the wandering days of yore. Thy lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Nevermore.
Much I marveled this ungainly
foul to hear discourse so plainly.
Little meaning, little relevancy bore. For we cannot help agreeing that
no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing. No audio still? Oh, I have this one going. Merely this, and nothing more. This and more I sat beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, fancy unto fancy linking, what this grim, ominous bird of yore meant in croaking, nevermore. Anyway, let's get back to reading some random stuff. I think everything's working. Basically, previously, focus. Anything work today? Previously, I was connected to a network cable. Then I was connected to the Wi-Fi. And the Wi-Fi is slower than the network cable, so I switched back to the network cable, which is presumably going to fix everything, which should have been set that way in the first place, but wasn't because I changed it. So there you go. Insider scoop. Let's get Joan Rivers on the board here. This is Joan Rivers. Prepare to be offended, right? You're not going to be able to take it. Joan, even in a book, is stronger than you. Here we go. I hate it now that everyone expects a tip. In this country, waiters make about $1.53 an hour. Hardly a livable wage, even if you live in Iowa. I hate it when people come up to me and say, you know, Joan, for what you pay for an apartment in Manhattan, you could have a 12-bedroom house in Iowa. That's right, I could, but I'd be in Iowa. Tipping isn't an issue in European countries and Australia because wait staffs are unionized and they're paid decent salaries. They're not working for tips, which means the service really sucks. I hate that. But suddenly, everyone expects to be given a gratuity. In the old days, delivery boys, hairdressers, and the occasional uterus were tipped. Now everyone expects a reward for exceptional service. All across America, there are tip jars everywhere. Tip jars are popping up more than an Anthony Weiner at a photo shoot. There are even tip jars on the counter at Baskin-Robbins ice cream stores. Why? There's no kitchen, no table service. It's a scooper, rum raisin, and a cone. How exceptional could the service be? Did Billy with the acne make my scoop of vanilla ice cream look like a soft sculpture of Barack Obama? Did he sing the entire score of Kiss Me, Kate while putting sprinkles on my cookie? Why should I tip him when he didn't do anything? I blame the tipping for no reason syndrome on Starbucks, who makes their customers do all the work. When I go to Starbucks, I'm putting in my own sugar, my own cream, my own straw. I might as well go to Colombia with Juan Valdez and get on a donkey and pick the beans. So from here on in, no tips for the baristas. Barista, by the way, is an Italian word that means fucking lazy. Am I supposed to start tipping everybody like the usher at the movie theater? How about the guy on the highway crew who waves orange flags to divert traffic? Or my plastic surgeon? Should I leave a 20 on the dresser if he makes my nipples wink? Here we go. I hate it when the tables in restaurants are too close together. The only person who likes having strangers on top of him is George Michael in a public toilet. I don't want other people so close to my table that I can hear them chew, burp, and fart. If I want to hear those things, I'll dine alone. So, classic Joan Rivers, obviously from before the bad times, joking about restaurants back when we could still joke about things, right? Let's remember back to those times. Let's have some more jokes. Let's see. Here we go. Here's just a random ones. I hate Paris Hilton. Not because she has no talent or because she's a big skank hoe, but because she's named after the city of Paris. And I hate the city of Paris, which I already explained to you in another chapter, mis-ami. But it's just not Paris Hilton that annoys me. I hate Savannah, Brooklyn, Austin, and Dallas, too. When Hillary Clinton said it takes a village, she didn't mean you should name your children Levittown and Kalamazoo. She meant we should collectively, as one, beat the shit out of parents who name their children Pacoima or Secaucus. If you're going to name your kids after towns and villages, then be original. This is my son Little Rock, and my daughter Bangor. I believe you know the twins, Perth and Amboy, and their bold-eyed cousin, Buffalo. So, just again, random jokes from Joan Rivers, not selected for any reason, not meaning anything, just let's have a laugh. I don't know. I had a laugh yesterday. I'm not allowed to talk about it. I think Jeremy will like it. I think Jeremy's the only one who's going to like it, but everybody else, I don't get all mad. Louis C.K. has a new comedy special out. It's $8 on his website. I hear it's pretty funny. Just saying. A lot of it, though, I mean, I like what he did, but a lot of it seems like he's digging for scary and reactionary things. But at the same time, I like scary and reactionary things. I can laugh at them. I'm shocked. I'm like, oh my, he said that. And then I laugh, because I wanted him to say something that I didn't expect. That's why I paid him $8. So Louis C.K., as you guys don't know, set out on his own on the internet a long time ago, started selling his own shows. One of the first comedians to do that back in the day when Radiohead was lauded for giving away their In Rainbows album, Pay As You Want. So you can pay what you want. I don't know. I don't really care. I'm not going to take a political stance on the Louis C.K. thing, his own business, their own business. But I don't know. I saw a tweet where somebody was like, the new Louis C.K. special's out. And if you have to watch it, you should pirate it. And normally I'm like, okay, pirate whatever you want. Big studios. Let's borrow a Marvel movie or whatever you want. I mean, it's, they have lots of Marvel movies. But I was like, oh man, this guy got kicked down so much. And now this person on the internet saying we should just steal his show. So, I figured I'd give him $8. And again, he performed a great stand-up show. I don't know, hour and a half, whatever. Check it out, Louis C.K. Or don't. I don't care. Do what you want. But let's check it out right now. The like bar is all over the place. Open Office is like infinite powers and constantly reconfiguring. The incredible ability to do anything, and then the ability to never stop messing with it. See, look, now I got the bar all over the place. It's also you have to slow down. So, we should all smash the like button. We've got 5 likes right now, 13 people watching. Getting ready to do the news. We had a system break on the other chat. You can watch me read Auden poems. I don't know. I love Auden. He's great. He's got the rhymes. I did The Unknown Citizen, which you probably heard me do before because I like it. I did part of The Raven here. I was listening to the other guy read it behind me. Oh, that's awesome. More thumbs down. You can also vote thumbs down. According to YouTube, it really just matters if you vote, if you want to know the truth. So if you want to vote up or down, that's great. But it helps spread the word about the show, helps YouTube show that there's humans out there watching the show. Cool. And that's mainly what YouTube is looking for. Let's check out the price of Bitcoin. Let's get going. Today is Monday, April 6th, 2020. This is the Thomas Hunt Show. The price of Bitcoin is up 5.15% in the last 24 hours, with a last of 7,145, a high of 7,174, and a low of 6,690. That's $1 for 13,994 Satoshis. Isn't it better having the Satoshi number right there on the page? Shout out to Bitcoinal, the seasonal Bitcoin charts, now with Satoshis right on the page. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is up, and it's open. The Dow Jones is up 5.26% in the last 5 or 6 hours, with a last of 22,159, above a previous close of 21,052. Coronavirus cases previously worldwide around 1.2 million. Below that, 67,000 deaths. Let's get a refresh. That didn't go up that much. Coronavirus cases worldwide, 1,297,704 infected, 71,282 dead. Stay home, fight the disease by staying home and not spreading it to other people. It might not seem much to you, you might not worry and think that you'll live through this fine, but the people that you infect if you go outside, they might die. So they might get very sick. Let's stay home. We're going to have to stay home longer than anyone thinks. So if you're mentally strong, let's be mentally strong and let's stay home. Wear a fucking mask. If you have to go outside, wear a mask. We've been talking about masks for a couple of weeks now. I talked to Balaji. I talked to my friend in Hong Kong. They both agreed. They're like, having a mask better than not having a mask. It took weeks, but eventually the public caught up. So it's getting better out there. More people are wearing masks. The CDC says you should wear a mask. The WHO says you should wear a mask. Wear a mask. Wear a mask. Not sure why the video audio is delayed, but oh well, we'll keep working with that. Check out these guys from the 1918 pandemic. They're police officers, and they're all wearing masks. Everyone wore masks. It was required. We didn't spread the disease as much. Even now, they're starting to waffle. I saw the Surgeon General on TV, and it was not a great scene. The Surgeon General was dancing all over it. He was saying things like, well, at first, we didn't know that the virus spread so much when people were asymptomatic, i.e. not showing symptoms. Let's get rid of this science language. He also said they didn't know that the disease spread when people were pre-symptomatic. So there's two right there. There's one, people who have the disease and never know it. They just walk around spreading it. Maybe they get a cough, right? Then there's two, people who have the disease but aren't showing it yet, pre-symptomatic. Now, I'm not an infectious scientist or anything like this, but we all know that most flus are generally a problem in the pre-symptomatic or the early stages, right? When you just get the flu, that's when you're out spreading it to people. So if everyone who just got the flu or everyone in general wore a mask, we would have spread it less. It would have been one of those accidents in our favor. We would have said, well, we don't know if we need to wear a mask, but we just did anyway. And it turned out, if we had the thing, we'd stop spreading it. If we didn't have it, maybe it doesn't help us in getting it, but by having everyone wear it, we slow the spread of it. So it was one of those really obvious whoopsies. Later on, maybe we'll have impassioned congressional hearings with high-ranked doctors and nurses, surgeon generals and others crying and pleading and saying, we were told we didn't have enough masks. We had to protect the mask supply. We didn't think that something so simple as telling the people to wear cloth masks would be so effective. We had forgotten our history. We lost touch. So, oh well. Like this show. Wear a mask. Like this show. 7 people have liked this show so far. Thanks so much. Liking the show is free. Coronavirus cases in the United States, previously around 321,000 infected, 9,000 dead. Quick refresh, 339,596 infected, 9,695 dead. This is the enemy. Spiky balls of death. It's a beautiful rendering, though. The red flourishes of the crowns, the little orange dots, the lethal yellow dots. Something really beautiful that's going to get inside you and try to kill you. First mover. Trillions in coronavirus stimulus bring out the Bitcoin bulls. That's right. Money, 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 money.
There is an infinite amount of cash at the Federal Reserve.
There's an infinite amount of cash in the Federal Reserve. So naturally, people are buying Bitcoin because there's not an infinite amount of Bitcoin. That's kind of it's a no-brainer. Argo blockchain defies COVID-19, mines record levels of Bitcoin in Q1. And for everyone's loss, there's someone else's gain. So we're all saying, what's happened to the miners? What's going to happen? Well, someone picked up the slack and picked up a ton of Bitcoins in the month of January, in the month of March, sorry. So in March, they mined 333 Bitcoins as opposed to 337 in February. They've mined a total of 918 Bitcoins in the first 3 months of 2020. So that's a heavy, heavy hodl for Argo blockchain, mining that Bitcoin. Crypto long and short. Is Bitcoin more like gold or equities? Spoiler, it's a third thing. It's not like either. It's like all things, but different. Billionaire makes the case for a $1 million Bitcoin price. Everyone loves that headline. Let's see where we're going. Social Capital CEO and former Facebook executive was an early Bitcoin investor. He bought a lot in 2013. At one point, he believed he owned 5% of the Bitcoin monetary base. He says volatility is too high. It's a speculative investment. Traditional fiat currencies. Extreme volatility pushes Bitcoin into this ghetto of day traders and speculators. And for now, that's where we are. We're in this ghetto. Day traders and speculators must be flushed out in order for Bitcoin to get out of this word keeps getting worse and worse, this bad neighborhood of volatile assets. Additionally, the interest of long-term holders must be maintained, and the potential for traditional financial infrastructure to implode must appear increasingly likely.
There is an infinite amount of cash at the Federal Reserve.
No problems there. So this is why he thinks the price is going up. It's either zero or millions. So there we go. That was a lot of walking around to get back to where we always were. Everyone was always saying it was zero or millions. So thanks for joining the discussion 5 years later. Will Bitcoin price hit 70,000 post-halving? Everyone loves these articles. These are the best articles, right? Will Bitcoin price hit blank before blank? And it looks like mainly he's working on the Plan B stock to flow model, which wasn't even really his model. It's just the general theory that everyone had in Bitcoin. There's not a lot of Bitcoin. Every time the halving happens, the value, the amount of Bitcoin being produced every 10 minutes goes down by half. It's a pretty dramatic thing. Even if the market didn't pre-react, we've seen in the past, it post-reacted and later on the price took off. If it doesn't go up, the miners will be mining while losing money. However, the miners who are capable of mining while losing money may end up with lots more money. Bitcoin equities markets rally on signs of hope. I guess. So Italy, Spain may have flattened the curve, may have gone over the hump. Not quite flattened the curve, but we'll see. And I don't know. The stimulus package seems like a complete train wreck. The small business loans are having a lot of trouble getting out. Individual people don't know how to apply or what to apply for. Unemployment went up 6.6 million unemployed, I think it was. Something like that. We have an incredible amount of unemployed. They're also out of health insurance thanks to the American system. and they're not going to be readmitted into Obamacare. They're just going to be given money. So we'll see if they can even get health insurance, if they even choose to buy it. So yeah, hope. I don't know. Short term. Zappo moved $633 million in Bitcoin for less than a pint of milk. And we talk about this kind of thing all the time, but it's always fun. 100,000 Bitcoin moved for just 26 cents. So Bitcoin is too expensive. Fees are too damn high. I wish we had bigger blocks. Blah, 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 blah. Has anyone found Trump's soul? Anyone? He's not rising to the challenge of the coronavirus pandemic. He's shriveling into nothingness. I'm just going to read the beginning of this. It was a pretty fantastic opinion piece from the New York Times. I know, New York Times. But still, listen to the words. Do you remember President George W. Bush's remarks at Ground Zero in Manhattan after the September 11th terrorist attacks? I can still hear him speaking of national grief and national pride. This was before all the awful judgment calls and fatal mistakes, and it doesn't excuse them. But it mattered, because it reassured us that our country's leader was navigating some of the same emotional currents that we were. Do you remember Barack Obama's news conference after the school shooting in Newtown, Connecticut, that left 28 people, including 20 children, dead? I do. Freshest in my memory is how he fought back tears. He was hurting. He cared. And while we couldn't bank on new laws to protect the next massacre, we could at least hold on to that. One more question. Do you remember the moment when President Trump's bearing and words made clear that he grasped not only the magnitude of this rapidly metastasizing pandemic, but also our terror in the face of it? It passed me by, maybe because it never happened. In Trump's predecessors, for all their imperfections, I could sense the beat of a heart and see the glimmer of a soul. In him I can't, and that fills me with a sorrow and a rage that, quite frankly, I don't know what to do with. Americans are dying by the thousands, and he gloats about what a huge, rapt television audience he has. They're confronting financial ruin and not sure how they'll continue to pay for food and shelter, and he reprimands governors for not treating him with adequate adulation. He's not rising to the challenge before him, not even by a millimeter. He's shriveling into nothingness. On Friday, when Trump relayed a new recommendation by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention that all Americans wear face masks in public places, he went so far out of his way to stress that the coverings were voluntary and that he himself wouldn't be going anywhere near one, that he might as well have branded them apparel for skittish losers. I've finally settled on his epitaph. Donald J. Trump, too cool for the coronavirus. This is more than a failure of empathy, which is how many observers have described his deficiency. It's more than a failure of decency, which has been my go-to lament. It's a failure of basic humanity. In the Washington Post a few days ago, Michael Gerson, a conservative who worked in Bush's White House, wrote that Trump's spirit is a vast, trackless wasteland. Not exactly trackless. There are gaudy outposts of ego all around the horizon. When the direness of this global health crisis began to be apparent, I was braced for the falsehoods and the misinformation that are Trump's trademarks. I was girded for the incompetence that defines an administration with such contempt for proper procedure and for true expertise. But what has taken me aback and torn me up with surprise on the inside are the aloofness, arrogance, pettiness, meanness, narcissism, and solipsism that persist in Trump, that flourish in him, even during a once-in-a-lifetime emergency that demands something nobler. Under normal circumstances, these traits are galling. Under the current ones, they're gutting. I don't take responsibility at all. Did you know I was #1 on Facebook? To bother with just one of those sentences while a nation trembles is disgusting. To bother with both, as Trump did, is perverse. So he goes on about the media and COVID and so forth, about how the virus has become popular, how Fauci has become popular, almost envious of the virus's popularity, almost jealous of the doctor. Well, let's get started on today's news. We talked about Bitcoin. Price is looking good. Stock market is up. Meanwhile, unfortunately, we've got more news. Check out the Tatiana Show. We were live on YouTube yesterday. Hung out with a lot of cool people. Talked about prepping and other stuff about the virus. Check it out on the Tatiana Show. Got the link right here on Twitter. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson admitted to the hospital for tests over persistent coronavirus symptoms. And I'm sure you all remember about 10 days ago when Boris Johnson said he'd been diagnosed with the coronavirus, and he was very nonchalant. He talked about how he had a light case and he had light symptoms, and sadly it was before he'd really gotten the virus. So now 10 days in, he's been rushed to the hospital. We don't know if he's on a ventilator or in a coma or anything like that. Hopefully he's going to be fine. But once again, this virus is very serious. It starts off, you think it's a cold or a flu. We've all had those before. You're going to muscle through it. You're strong. Don't take Advil. Don't take ibuprofen, right? Take Tylenol, acetaminophen, not Advil. There's just something about the disease. It works well with Advil. It works bad. Don't take Advil. So I've heard that. Just FYI. Not medical advice, but that's what I've heard. We had some polls out here. I'm kind of surprised out some of these polls when I can just only assume some of you haven't seen Tiger King yet. But one of the polls was, is it harder to keep the spirit of Star Trek alive when there is no Star Trek on TV, or when there is bad Star Trek on TV? We only had 25 votes, 6 hours left in the poll. Still a chance for your vote, but it's looking pretty strong. 76%. It's harder to keep the spirit alive when there's bad Star Trek on TV. So seeing things like Discovery, Picard, 2 out of the 3 new movies, all being kind of anti-Star Trek, really kind of makes it hard to stand up for the original values of real Star Trek. Then on the other side, I'm just shocked to see this. 48 voters say that Star Trek Picard is better than Tiger King, a margin of 56% to 43%. Let me know in the chat, what did you think about Tiger King? I've still got a few episodes left, so no spoilers. If Dan was here, and Dan's supposed to be here, I don't know where he is, but if Dan shows up, we'll talk more about Tiger King, get some back and forth going. I don't want to do any spoilers. I want you to enjoy it. At the very least, I'll say, of course, Tiger King is a show about people who own big cats, and these people are insane. One of the best things I like about this documentary, and again, the world is full of cliffhangers and ... to be continues, and I know everything's like that. Even the sitcoms that I watch put the best jokes at the end, so you have a good feeling, and then you'll watch the next episode. But at the end of every episode of the Tiger King documentary, it's on Netflix. I'm sure you can get it. And you know, I'm sure it's on the other things as well. You don't have to have Netflix if you don't want Netflix. But at the end of each episode of the documentary, they reveal something about one of the people in the documentary that is so bizarre and so counter to kind of normality and maybe what you thought about that person, that your mind will just explode, and then you'll have to watch the next episode. And I think it's real. I think that people who own big cats really are this insane. If it's contrived, if it's made up, it's just a fantastic story. We can enjoy it for that. But yeah, it's an amazing, weird show. Tiger King. It's way better than Star Trek Picard. I'm sorry, Picard. It was not a great outing. Hey, shout out to my favorite band. This is both exciting and incredibly aging. But 40 years ago, REM played their first ever gig. It was a free show at their college in Athens, Georgia. So if you haven't heard, REM belong just longer than just the hits. Check out some of the albums. Give it a try, like REM. Oh, we're going back to it. We're drawn back in. Trump just ended the press conference before Dr. Fauci could answer a question about the unproven drug that Trump is pushing. It was clear Dr. Fauci was going to disagree with Trump again. Another tantrum from the toddler. And we're going to talk more on this, but this keeps coming up, this hydroxychloroquine. As we've already discussed on this show, the order of operations for finding a miracle cure, under no circumstances should you announce it before you test it, right? I think we can just agree as scientists that the steps are, if you find a miracle cure, you think you have one, and this is a miracle treatment, right? So it only affects people who already have the disease. But if you find a miracle treatment, phase 1, test the treatment. It's important to do this before you announce it because part of the testing is called a double-blind test. And that means some of the people get a placebo. And a placebo is just nothing, right? It's a sugar pill, right? It's not the drug. And this way we can tell if the drug is more effective than nothing and simply the value of people believing that they have the cure. This drug has not been tested. So we've already announced it. By already announcing it, now people are hoarding it. People want to use it. People actively want to try it themselves, not in a clinical test environment. So it set us back quite a way. And again, Trump just wants to deliver good news. There's a lot of bad news out there. There's 70 days of inaction. There's general confusion about where the supplies are going. There's bizarre inaction. This guy, Navarro, he's an economic advisor. He's been put in charge of the economy, but now he's also advising on doctor matters like this drug. So this cure thing, this false hope, and maybe it works, right? Maybe it's a good treatment when mixed with Z-Pak and zinc and the AIDS drug and all these other things, right? But we need to test it in double-blind test before we're going to know. And that's what this generally comes down to. Allegedly, there was a fight or a disagreement in the Oval Office amidst Dr. Fauci and this guy Navarro, who's an economic advisor. We're going to go more towards that later. We've got some clips, but let's just see. I think we're going to try to roll through another Trump press conference. God help us. It was a shorter press conference than usual. It was a Sunday press conference. Before we do that, this is the night from the British Museum. This is a night of the Lewis chessmen. It is very detailed. There's a horse's ass. I put a horse's ass in your face. Sorry. You can see the detail, and you can also see the smoothness of the British Museum piece, the lack of a felt bottom. Now, in comparison, and again, this is just to do a palate cleanser so that you're clean before we start the press conference so that you can handle it. Here is the night from the Scottish Museum. This is all the way from up in Edinburgh, Scotland. And this night is very different than the other night, more war damaged, more chipped, more everything, right? He's got the face and he's got a felt bottom. So check it out. You've had your palates cleansed. We'll try to do one more palate cleanser in the middle of the nightmare that is the press conferences. Just to check in here from Palmer Report, Donald Trump's night so far. Holds a press briefing just because Joe Biden was holding one. Trump stooge Peter Navarro screams at Dr. Fauci. Rudy Giuliani goes berserk. Motley Crue's Tommy Lee calls Trump a fucking lunatic. Trump is going to hell. It's still only 9 p.m., so sounds like a humdinger. I hope we have clips. Jason Scott, who I sent a modified profile pic, has officially changed his profile to one with a mask. Very cool. Jason Scott launched textfiles.com, the BBS documentary, old school archivist, now working at the Internet Archive. Very cool guy, Jason Scott. REM again, 40th anniversary. Japan is expected to trigger declaration of coronavirus emergency today. Could go into effect as early as tomorrow. Likely to stop short of full lockdown. Comes as infections rise to over 3,600 this weekend. And of course, we've been keeping an eye on Japan. They were keeping the numbers down, hoping to have the Olympics. I don't know how they kept the numbers down, but now that the Olympics have been postponed a year, numbers are rising, and Japan seems suddenly in trouble. Tokyo's infection spike after Olympic delay sparks questions. From February 8th to March 27th, Japan tested about 50,000 people, a daily average of 1,270, fewer than the national daily capacity of several thousand. South Korea, by contrast, had tested about 250,000 people by mid-March. And again, it's the testing and getting on it early that helps you beat this virus. This is still true now in the United States. The lockdown is a temporary measure. What we really need is more tests, as well as the other medical equipment to deal with the expanding outburst and so on and so forth. This was a pretty fun game. Lights, Camera, Pod announced these 9 movies, but you only get to pick 3. See, there's tons of palate cleansers today. So get ready. Here are your 9 movies to choose from. I'm going to read them out loud just in case you're watching the audio podcast version of this show. Goodfellas, Pulp Fiction, Inception, Avengers: Infinity War, The Dark Knight, Empire Strikes Back, Space Jam, Toy Story, Jurassic Park. Now, again, you guys can break this down any way you want. If you have kids, you're probably going to launch more towards Toy Story here, depending on your age. For me, this was really a no-brainer. Obviously, Goodfellas, Pulp Fiction, that's ride or die, right? So I've got 2 locked down already. Once those are locked down, it really becomes a quality question between Jurassic Park and Empire Strikes Back. For me, Empire, far better, much more important. I'm going to miss the fancy effects of Jurassic Park, right? And sure, I think Dark Knight, I want to say is that the one with the Joker? I'm not even sure. But if that's the Joker one, sure, it's good, but I've watched it like once. Inception, watched once. Space Jam once. Toy Story, years ago. This is a great Avengers movie, but nothing compared to Goodfellas and Pulp Fiction. Tell me in the chat, what 3 movies would you keep? Do you agree? Goodfellas, Pulp Fiction, Empire Strikes Back. Obviously, this is supposed to be a discussion topic. You're supposed to have different opinions, so it's okay if your card reads Space Jam, Toy Story, Avengers. You just have different movie views than I do. It's a sad but beautiful story. A doctor taking a coronavirus patient out to watch the sunset. You can see the full hazmat suit that the doctor is wearing, and just kind of a sad but beautiful scene. So 70 days of denial, delays, and dysfunction. As things keep getting worse, we'll be hearing a lot of folks saying, look forward, not backwards, and don't politicize this disaster. Let me tell you, from a disaster management perspective, why that's bunk. And he starts out, this is Jeremy, Invest in Public Health, Kondayak. And he says, I read this piece Sunday morning over breakfast with a red pencil in hand, circling every missed opportunity, every point where better leadership and competent governance could have put us on a better course. There was a lot of red. A CDC that was overconfident in its ability to generate a test. An FDA that didn't feel it had the leeway to actively mobilize private labs. An HHS secretary who didn't see the need for mass testing. A White House that rejected funding for enhanced surveillance. Any one of these problems alone is an agency problem. All of them together is a systemic leadership problem. A failure at a high level to accurately recognize risk and fully mobilize an urgent readiness effort. And this is why looking backwards right now is important. Real-time learning and accountability are fundamental elements of good disaster management. As I've written before, mistakes are inevitable and even tolerable as long as you rapidly learn from and correct them. That broken and chaotic management culture The failure to anticipate and plan, the failure to correct mistakes, that is the core of what is wrong with this response, far more than any individual tactical misstep. And it's not being addressed. It's arguably worsening. You can see it in the tempest over Kushner's blatant misrepresentation of the purpose of the national stockpile. When the long-standing website language contradicts Jared, it's the website that changes, not Jared. You can see it in the running fiasco around hydroxychloroquine as a treatment. When its informed medical view contradicts the president's uninformed opinion, it's the president who steps in to answer questions. You can see it in the dismissal of the captain of the Theodore Roosevelt. When an officer puts the safety of his crew ahead of the White House's preferred narrative, it's the officer who gets changed out and now has COVID himself. These and so many other failures stem from a leadership culture that cannot be honest with itself, which is why the don't politicize comments are deeply wrong, because what they're actually saying is, don't hold us accountable, even as fundamental problems go unresolved. Criticism of the administration's mismanagement is not about partisan point scoring. It's about everyone's aging parents and immunocompromised loved ones, including my own. This is not theoretical. The country desperately needs to see this effort succeed. From other countries' experience, we know that success depends on early recognition of the risk, triggering response proactively rather than reactively, disciplined response execution. This virus, therein, reveals the best and worst of every government it encounters. So really great stuff there from Jeremy Coindike. And just check it out. It's not political. It's about competence. We need someone competent running this. And if we still don't have it, like Balaji was saying yesterday, let's bring in somebody else. Let's bring in Bill Gates as the virus czar. Let's bring in Barack Obama. Let's bring in somebody who can run this thing. Heated disagreement breaks out in the Situation Room over hydroxychloroquine. This is what we talked about earlier, about Dr. Fauci and not a doctor, Peter Navarro, economics expert, arguing over this supposed miracle treatment. Speaking of hydroxychloroquine, a trial was discontinued in Sweden because of severe side effects, seizure, and vision problems in patients. Early clinical trial termination is strictly guided by data safety monitoring committees. Stoppages are rare and a big deal and a bad sign. So again, when we actually test this miracle cure, sadly, we found that there are severe side effects in Sweden in one test so far. Seizure and vision problems in patients. So this is why we test medicines. That's the whole point. This guy took a photo at his local park this afternoon, and it makes him livid. So I agreed and also responded about those darn prostitutes walking their monkeys. For those of you who don't know, Le Grand Jeté, not only a wonderful piece of art by George Seurat, who did it using pointillism or pixels, which is incredibly modern to us. That's how we see everything. Everything on your screen right now is represented through very small pixels. But his, of course, you can see. And if you even see this piece at the Chicago Museum, you can walk right up to it, as they did in Ferris Bueller, and see the close-up of the dots. It was painted with dots. But this is a satirical scene. People from the time period would have seen this as a joke and laughed. We have all these gentry. See the fine hats, see the fine umbrellas, the fancy children, the fancy clothes, all this beautiful boating and all this scene. And then right here we have this gentleman with his cigar who's brought his lady who has clearly a monkey. She doesn't have a dog, it's a monkey. So it's a funny scene to people at the time because amidst all this grandness and the way it looks so nice, there's a prostitute. So funny little art joke there, a little palate cleanser. Keep you going. Hoddlenot writes, and I think he meant this as a negative thing, health authorities in Oslo, Norway, just informed people they should prepare for their freedom of movement being restricted for at least the rest of the year and likely well into 2021. And that is, again, how serious some countries are choosing to take this virus. I heard of a theory out of the Czech Republic that they could simply shut their borders for 2 years. They don't have the virus now. If they shut their borders, they won't get it, and they could keep their people healthy while waiting for the vaccine to be deployed. As I said, some countries trying that whole honesty thing. No one wants to know that they're going to be stuck inside for 6 months to a year and a half. But if you think about when the vaccine's getting here, you just might be stuck inside. Dr. Drew has a bad look here. He's suing on copyright grounds to try to remove this video of him being wrong about COVID-19 over and over again. He's one of those classic deniers who called it a flu, which might be okay when you're talking about celebrity gossip, but could be construed as health advice and wrong health advice, although Dr. Drew seems very committed to it. Maybe behind the scenes, all of his texts and emails line up with that. Otherwise, Dr. Drew could soon become Mr. Drew. And I'd play it. I mean, I like the idea of retweeting it because he's suing. Again, the Streisand effect here, you got to be part of that. It's the internet. But I don't know. We've heard a lot of this, like, it's a flu thing. So you guys get it. They said it's a flu a bunch of times. They're wrong. But let's keep moving. In addition to our safety and social lives, the coronavirus has hijacked our attention. It's almost impossible to focus on anything else. Our individual moods, for once, match the tenor of our collective crisis. So it is a kind of a dual problem of when you already have this attention economy and you're just like stuff all the time. And then now it's virus stuff. I mean, I did it myself this morning. I turned on the TV. I was supposed to watch CNBC, but drifted over to MSNBC. They're talking about the virus. They're interviewing nurses and doctors. I'm just getting all this scientific information that is great, but doesn't really help me not freak out more. And then, you flip back to CNBC. They think everything's fine. The market's going up. But yes, attention. Like he's saying, and I'm sure he's going to say in the article, at some point we have to take control of this. It's okay if you don't want to watch the news today. It's kind of not okay for me because I'm trying to do this show, but it's okay for you. You don't have to watch it. So you can take a day off from the news. You can watch just The Office all day long. No one's going to stop you. And what's great about an old show like The Office, or I'm watching this stupid show called The New Girl, and I don't really like it. But what's great about those shows is there's no virus. Friends may seem like they're constantly mentioning 9/11 because the Twin Towers were used in the background of every TV show based in New York City during the 90s. But 9/11 will never happen on Friends. And the virus will never happen on New Girl. And the virus will never happen in The Office. So you're safe there. And it's okay to take a break. Obviously, you can't pretend that you're back in the old world, start running around the outside, raw breathing, not wearing gloves, going to amusement parks, whatever you're going to do. But in your imagination world, you can read a book, you can go to the office, you can watch a movie, you can do whatever you want. I don't care. But you got to stay home. And it would be good to not focus on this thing for a little while. That's why I'm tweeting lots of pictures of museums and stuff and trying to show you some chess pieces. And maybe coming up, I'll show you my watch that I got in Prague. It's not fancy or anything, but it's kind of cool. I think it's kind of cool. And all right, so here we go. This was pretty much straightforward. This is the way you question people. This guy, I don't know his name, Berman on CNN, takes this Navarro character apart, right? Navarro is claiming scientific knowledge that he doesn't have. I just showed you the test from Sweden. Now you know more than he does, and you have at least enough knowledge to know that there is doubt, that this super treatment which again, we need a vaccine. We need a preventative, right? Preventative medicine. That's what we need. That keeps people who could get sick and die from getting sick and dying. Preventative medicine. Treatment is good. People that have it, keeping them from getting worse. But we want the other ones. Now let's see here what Navarro has to say. Again, he's an economic advisor. He's a political advisor, right? His degrees are in foreign policy, things like that, right? Economics.
Would you take it if you got sick?
Would I take it if I got sick?
Yeah, would you take it, knowing what you know now?
No, I would listen to my doctor about
Good.
whether or not
That's
I should
exactly
take it if
what
I
you
got
should
sick.
do.
I would consult
That's
my
exactly
doctor.
what you
I
should
would
do.
not consult
That's all we're
someone
asking
involved
to
with
do.
trade policy.
We're
I would
taking
not
29
consult with someone with trade policy,
I
Peter.
agree.
And my question,
I'm
do you
not
want a doctor?
prescribing anything.
Do you want a medical
I'm not
doctor, an
prescribing
internist?
anything,
Do you
John.
want an internist striking trade deals with Asian countries? Well, no,
Touche,
but that's my point.
But you're setting up a false narrative
I'm not.
here.
I swear to
John,
God, I'm not. You had a debate inside the Situation Room with the nation's top infectious disease doctor, the man who was in charge, to a certain extent, of the nation's medical response to this. And all he said, he wants this to work. Everyone wants this to work. All he has said is, let's let the testing and the science decide. What you seem to be saying is, I've read a study out of Wuhan, and I decided.
Yeah, that's so unfair.
Bam! Bam! I've read a study out of Wuhan, and I decided. Bam! And again, when he says touche, when you give up the point, he doesn't have it to think about it there. He's like, wait a minute. I'm not a doctor. I shouldn't be prescribing medicine. I should be doing trade deals, right? I mean, that's his specialty. And again, he's not even necessarily a specialist at that. This is the classic guy who 9 out of 10 economists agree. He's the one that doesn't agree. This is the guy in all the books about Trump, when you read about it, he has these wacky opinions and he comes in out of nowhere. And Mnuchin and the other people who are serious that work in the economy, who from the real world, they can't believe this guy. And again, he's been allegedly put in charge of the Defense Production Act. He's supposed to be telling us about how many ventilators he's made and how many gloves he's made, nuts and bolts, right? But instead, somehow he's up in this hydrochloroquine thing. I'm not sure why. Right here, he was touting his PhD in social science as qualifications for prescribing this drug. It doesn't make any sense to anybody. But again, maybe you're wrapped up in this thing. Maybe you want to give me a call and tell me why hydrochloroquine is the greatest cure in history and it's being held back by a conspiracy. So, meanwhile, Ocean Park has said its resident giant pandas, Yin Yang and Li Li, have mated naturally for the first time since they started trying decades ago. Executive Director Michael Booz said it's extremely exciting as there's a higher chance of pregnancy. So all we had to do was stop the entire world. Everyone who's staying home, everyone who hasn't been shopping, everyone who hasn't been gambling at the casinos, we haven't been going to shows, we're not going traveling, nobody's going to work, our office buildings are empty, we're not making any widgets, all our factories are shut down. But at least the pandas are fucking, right? Yeah, at least the pandas. So let's, yeah, pandas. So I guess, I don't know. That's what you get. All we had to do is shut down the world, and the pandas are mating again. Great graphic here from Antonio French on Twitter. It's a little Jaws quartet. And we have in the upper hand corner Richard Dreyfuss, the nervous scientist. He's not so sure that they've caught the shark. He thinks it's a bigger shark. He's nervous about this shark. That would be Dr. Fauci. Meanwhile, in the lower left-hand corner, you've got Ray Schneider, his character, the police officer. He's trying to protect his town, and he has to go out into the ocean and fight the shark. That would be Cuomo, governor of New York City. Of course, the shark in the lower right-hand corner is Jaws, COVID-19, the shark itself. And in the right-hand corner, the mayor of Amity, who's just trying to keep the beaches open. He's just trying to keep his customers happy. That would be President Trump. So pretty crushing Jaws comparison. And again, if you haven't watched it yet, definitely watch Jaws. I would like to rewatch it again. I've seen it quite a few times. But Jaws and Idiocracy, that seems to be what we're doing right now. That's your homework assignment if you're looking for some good movies to watch. Something funny and, well, Jaws isn't that funny. But all Are you bored? Are you stuck at home? Into Bitcoin and computers? You'll love the Proof of Work interviews on the World Crypto Network. Check it out. I've got a whole playlist of them. Last year, I traveled the world and recorded 52 interviews. That's one for each week with Bitcoiners, big and small, talking about their first computers and their experience growing up with computers and how it led them to Bitcoin. We've got Adam Back. We've got, creator of Hashcash, quoted in the white paper. Heck of a nice guy. Adam Back. We've got Slush, creator of Slush Pool, founder of Trezor. Super nice guy. We've got a bunch of other great people. Check them out right here. Proof of Work interviews. We've got the list. We've got a playlist here on the World Crypto Network. And check those out. They're fun. And they're nice. They're kind of long form, like a conversation. You never know where it's going to go. A lot of these people have similar stories, and I'll bet they have similar stories to you as well. Did you get a modem? Do you remember what it was like before the internet? Do you remember the internet? This is what we talk about. So it's fun. Check it out. The Dow Jones, like we talked about earlier, opened up 4%. And this guy right here keeps changing the concert posters in his background. The battle to be the coolest guy on CNBC is over. It's over. He's been mixing them up. He's got today's featured poster is Soundgarden and Pearl Jam. Looks like an early show. So a little bit of the Seattle sound. Looks like some Grateful Dead posters, maybe Joni Mitchell. Previously he had Bob Marley. This guy has just been killing it, rotating in and out his paintings and his posters, his 60s concert posters. Unlike other people, your backdrop is important. I mean, books are cool. Obviously, I like real books as opposed to fake books. But, you got to do something with your backdrop. And a lot of people on CNBC have not been trying. They've just been showing their houses. And it's kind of embarrassing. It's like, pick up the house a little bit first. Like, are we going to be examining your background? Yes, we are stuck at home. We are that bored. We are examining your background, CNBC, and other channels. Bury the lead in this piece. The economy won't really open until there's a vaccine. I've been saying it. Nobody else has been saying it. But we've got a year to a year and a half wait inside. Our only hope is Bill Gates and other scientists. I hear Bill Gates has a webpage with 7 different versions of the vaccine. He's building 7 factories to crank out the vaccine so we can test all of these versions, find out the right one, abandon the other factories, and then crank out some more of that vaccine. So that's the kind of strategy we need. The economy won't really open until there's a vaccine. You know it. I know it. Deep in your heart, you know it. But they're not telling you about it. They're not talking about it. Call into the show. We're going to open up calls just a little bit, probably around 10 o'clock as soon as we get through this. As soon as we dig our way through all this news, we're going to open up for phone calls. So you tell me if I'm right or wrong. Are we prepared? Are you going to spend a year to a year and a half inside? It's going to ruin your suntan. If only you had a tanning bed at home. We read this morning. This is more than a failure of empathy, which is how many of observers have described his deficiency. It's more than a failure of decency, which has been my go-to lament. It's a failure of basic humanity. Unbelievable. We made it to the top. We're out of the news. We moved the Overton window. We're shifting policies. And we're taking donations. If you'd like to donate Bitcoin, you can go ahead and pause it right here. This is my old fundraiser to get me home from Frankfurt and Malta. And we almost made it. We're 96% towards our goal for this fundraiser. I thought it might be fun to try to close out old fundraisers. It all goes to some random Bitcoin address somewhere anyway. Saving for the future, if there is a future. But let's go ahead and open it up to phone calls. Get the calling graphics on the screen. You can call the show now at 1-518-600-1949 or on Skype at World Crypto Network, all one word. We'll try to keep the show going at least 15 more minutes here. Give you a chance to call. Check out what's going in the chat. Not quite a lot going on, but you can call us now. Even if you're in the chat, you just turn your radio down and call. call. Looking for the copy and paste with the phone numbers. Here it is. There it is. Boom. Call now in the chat. So this is your opportunity if you'd like to call. Otherwise, keep going through the news. Maybe we'll recap some Auden poems, see what else is going on. I wanted to talk more about Tiger King, but looks like Dan's not going to make it again. Let's see. I don't know. Big, long story. Dan can't make it. So that's too bad. Hopefully Dan will be with us tomorrow and we can talk more about Tiger King. Obviously all the callers are going to be about Tiger King. And I'm okay with that. Hello, caller. You're live on the World Crypto Network. What's your name and where are you calling from?
Good morning, Bitcoin. It's your favorite conspiracy theorist,
Dun,
Mr.
dun,
Mustafa.
dun. Hey, Mustafa. How's it going? You hanging in there?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good.
Yeah.
I've just crossed over to the other side. No, I'm just kidding. I just got to California, actually.
Hey, the Golden State.
Yep. And I figured, if they're going to lock us down, we might as well go home and just chill by the beach, man.
Sounds pretty good. So you're not going to be delivering supplies during this crisis? You're actually going home?
No, I am. I'm going to be delivering. I figured, if I might as well be helping out my own community, man, and they need help. There's a lot of work around my town or the region where I'm from, the Central Valley, California. And so I'm just going out there to, support my local area.
That sounds great, man. Just wear gloves, wear a mask, do what you can, try to stay safe. But yeah, I think there's a lot of people that need help right now. I saw a friend of mine was baking like an extra lasagna for his neighbor. He said he was going to go drop it off. If you've got extra food, if you've got old people living in your neighborhood, maybe just drop some of it off. I think they'd love to have it, even if in this crazy world they have to disinfect it first or whatever. But still, it's still a good gift, even if you have to wipe it off with a Lysol wrap or whatever. So.
Right. Yeah, so I literally just started watching. I just clicked on your video like a few seconds before you opened up the phone line. So I'm not really sure what do you think?
Dramatic question right here. Do you think we're going to have to stay inside for a year to a year and a half so that we can cure the virus for real with the vaccine? Do you think that the secret kind of like, we don't want to say it, like let's remain calm. Let's certainly not panic even here. But yeah.
Well,
what do you think?
The short answer is no.
I disagree, but go ahead.
Because I don't believe there is a virus.
There's a virus, man. I mean, gosh.
I mean, maybe there is a virus. It's just not as bad as we're being told.
Okay.
I really honestly believe that we're being lied to by mainstream media just to keep us home for some reason that I haven't figured out yet.
Yeah, I don't think there's a good reason. I mean, I think there is a virus, and let's go down. I mean, let's say basically you're doubting the severity of the virus, and you're saying it's an overreaction. And a lot of my friends have said this. And then there's this other issue where it's like evil government control, and no one wants evil government control. And we can all say on one end of the spectrum, Hungary is already gone, right? I had beautiful times in Budapest, and I have friends there. I hope they're okay. But their government is locked down. And, you could tell from the beginning Hungary was going to have this problem. So for them, it's going to be very hard to reverse. But for the rest of these governments, say like Germany,
there's a lot of countries like that. I got a couple friends in the United Arab Emirates, the UAE.
Yep.
And they are on a 24-hour mandatory lockdown, and they're being forced to, make like deliveries for everything. Even they're saying like if you need a doctor, there's a number you need to call the government, a specific branch of government that will arrange for a doctor to come to you. And they won't even let you go outside the house unless you're one of the people authorized to do so, like essential type businesses or whatever.
I think
which my friends are not.
Yeah, definitely.
So they're
Societies
staying
that were
home. They've
already
been home
tight
for
are
like
going to
a
stay
week.
tight for sure. I mean, I think they're gonna tighten up, and then it's going to be harder to get them back. But for our normal
Yeah, my
societies, I
friends in
just don't
Egypt
think
are the same way.
people aren't going to
You know,
take
they're
this
locked
forever.
down.
Like, we're going to beat this virus and we're going to turn it around. We're going to come out of it. And at that point, then we can do the whole severity thing. But I agree. There are two major issues that people are upset about. There's this severity of the virus question. And then part two, there's this political overreaction question. So but I think we're going to deal with both of those
exactly.
in their
It
time.
kind of seems like, you know, whether there's a virus or not, whether it's as severe as they say or not, I think the biggest threat that I see right now is the fact that all these countries in the world are just handing over more and more control to their governments out of fear. And then once this blows over soon, I hope, it's going to be very hard to take back that control.
I don't think it's going to be that hard. I mean, I think, yes, in the UAE, in Hungary, where the situation was already trending that way, it's going to be hard to reverse those trends. But I mean, our trends here are pretty
$2
bad.
trillion stimulus bill that was full of stuff, man. If you go read through it, there's a lot of very scary things that were passed in that bill.
We've been robbed.
Like
we've been
anonymous
robbed before.
voting.
I mean,
and something like, you know, like, I don't know. I'm not really
voting's
sure.
actually
I'm
supposed
the
to be
smartest person in the world, so I.
Voting kind of has to be anonymous, because like then your boss could see if you voted for what he wanted you to vote for, and if you didn't, he could punish you.
No, but
so
I think it was like a clause there where you can kind of vote like online or something, some kind of like internet-based voting system, which, you know, we all know anybody can fake identities on the internet, so you know. It would have to be implemented in a very unique and complicated way to do proper internet voting. We need a lot of independent checks and things like that. It would be a massive science project. Like, you know, what does that have to do with the crisis that we're in right now? You know, it was like completely
I think vote by
unrelated.
mail. Vote by mail is the obvious solution to the ability to vote during this pandemic, and in my opinion, it's always been the solution since the election crisis of the year 2000. I looked at the situation, and that was before we'd put in all these terrible voting machines. That's when voting machines were just theoretical. We had just a few. A lot of the voting machines we had were these machines where you'd move a metal thing and you'd punch, and it would make a hole, and that was it. That was a voting machine. But yeah, at that time, it seemed obvious that vote by mail was the cheaper, more efficient, more turnout solution. Instead, we wasted all this money on voting machines with touch screens, where you have no idea what kind of input's going in. You have no idea what's being written, what's being punched on the card. The paper record is weak. Just complete nightmare of these voting machines. Even the fact that they'd be limited in some areas, that they wouldn't give them to some areas, and not just another chance for shenanigans. Whereas vote by mail is so simple. All we really need is open source tabulators. The tabulating machines are not strong. We do not know what happens inside them. It's black box. Other than that, you get a card at home, you fill it out, it's postage paid, hopefully, sometimes it's not, but I assume the new ones be. You seal it back up, you sign the outside, you stick it in a blue mailbox, they're all over the place. Postal carriers already have this kind of quasi-government relationship. It's not quite a government program, but it is, you know, that thing. And so they can be trusted. Yep. They're also trusted with the rest of our business documents. I mean, there is some mail fraud, but not massive levels. And again, we investigate it, we crack it down, we find out. So yeah, you just vote by mail. Everyone can vote. You have lots of time at home to watch videos and read books and read websites and decide who you want to vote for and what the propositions are, anything like that. It's just a ridiculously superior way of voting. The only problem is that it increases turnout by about 10%. And as we've talked about here, it's not just a battle of ideas. It actually, as Sun Tzu would say, it takes in the sun and the earth, right? The world that we battle is in a real world. And in the real world, simple fact is there are more registered Democrats than registered Republicans. So anything you do to increase the turnout probably helps the Democrats and hurts the Republicans, which means that the Republicans will never do anything that makes it easier to vote or increases the turnout or something like that. So we're in kind of one of those points where these two
Yeah,
sides
I
have
don't
been
know.
driven
I'm
to
not
it.
so happy with the Democratic Party right now, man. I don't know. Seems like we're being scammed some way or another. I mean, I don't know. I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I guess I would say I'm a little left leaning, but I'm getting much closer to center in these last few weeks, just because of what's happening and like, you know, the reaction from government, you know. And you know, just to throw out another conspiracy theory here, because I am a conspiracy theorist at heart.
Okay.
I'm driving around the country all over, right? You know, you guys know I'm a truck driver. I just go from coast to coast. That's all I do. And I've noticed an abnormally increasing amount of these street lights being changed. And I don't know. I went online and checked, and some people are freaking out. They're like, oh, they're GPS trackers or something. I don't know. The people go or take it wherever they want to go. But I thought it's pretty strange that, you know, throughout all these bigger towns, bigger cities like Chicago or St. Louis or you know, Oklahoma City and all these places that I've been through, it's like the same thing over and over again. Why are they changing all the street lights out on the highways?
I mean, okay, I'll give you two answers for fun. Occam's razor.
They weren't working?
No, Occam's razor,
know.
the simplest explanation is the best one. We've had fantastic advancements in lights in our time, right? The new LED lights are so much brighter than the traditional light bulbs.
They were
and that
brand
kind
new
of thing.
already, though. Like, these are like brand new.
Okay, I'd have to look at the specifics, but I assume that it's a power
that
saving.
are being changed.
It's a power saving light issue. But then I want to also support you on the other side with the conspiracy issue, and I'll tell you that during the Chinese Olympics, they replaced all of their street lamps with monitoring street lamps. And it was everything that you don't want in a street lamp, and they did it all over the country, and it's documented, it's proof, it's one of the security things that Beijing did running into the Olympics. So if you want to go wild with the conspiracy theory,
it would be like the perfect time to pull something like that off right now because everybody's at home.
But again, Occam's razor, it's also the perfect time to fix the roads. It's also the perfect time to do the maintenance.
Though.
Well,
you see, that's
I don't know.
quarrel.
They're fixing the roads here
like,
in Vegas, man. I was
roads,
down on the strip.
There's nobody on there, and they're just switching out light bulbs. Like, what the hell? Like, I don't care about light bulbs.
Oh, it's all related. It's all maintenance. But yeah, I agree. Any maintenance is good maintenance. Let's get it done right now. Again, I'm not a fan of the president, but he's been talking about infrastructure. I think it's always a good time to do infrastructure. I think America's roads and bridges suck. I think they're old and crappy.
Absolutely.
And
I would have been very impressed if they were fixing the pavement, the potholes and all this stuff.
It's again, I mean, I think
going through the country, it's bad, man. It's very bad. I'm switching shocks on my truck like every 2 months because of that. And, I don't really care much for street lights. Most highways are completely black, completely dark when you're out far away from cities. And like, for example, in Chicago, because I was there all the time, that road that I'm talking about, like 295 or 355, so the interstate, they had just redid the whole road and put brand new lights. So why are they changing them out again?
I don't know. We'll have to find out. We'll have to find out more about the lights for you, man. I'm sure somebody out there, they're like, oh, they used the wrong ones, the idiots. These ones last not very long.
Oh, yeah, the ones without the cameras and the GPS tracker.
Well, yeah. We'll have to see how it's going, Mustafa. So we'll just have to keep it going.
I don't know.
But.
Yeah, I just figured, you know me. I'm just going to call in and give you my 2 cents on what I think is happening or not happening. Bitcoin price is kind of going up. That's a good thing, I heard in the news that a lot of non-Bitcoiners are getting into Bitcoin. New money's coming into the system, which is awesome. I hope you guys are dollar cost averaging like we should be.
That'd be good. I remember one time Paris Hilton was starting an ICO. But that was a reverse sign. That was one of those signs we should have sold it all.
Was it? It's hot. It's hot coin.
It's hot.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Mustafa. Right, give us a call anytime, man.
Yeah. For sure. Talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.
Right. Bye-bye. And you can call us now on Skype at World Crypto Network, all one word, or on the phone at 1-518-600-1949. If you're international, you can use 001 because we are in the United States. There it is. I can even make it appear on the bottom of the screen. Aha, graphics to the rescue, right? But what do you guys think? Do you think there's no virus? Do you think there's a severity problem with the virus? It's just not killing enough people. And in general, it comes back to this idea of pandemic awareness, right? It's been interesting in the last couple of days. People have been going back and they found out that George W. Bush, not normally a fan, was also worried about pandemics. It turned out that he had read a book, pre-release early book, someone sent it to him, about the 1918 Spanish influenza and the panic of 1918. And it sparked old W's mind, and he was worried about it. And he passed this information on to Obama, the next president. And late in his term, I'm not sure it was a threat most of the time, but late in his term, President Obama became worried about pandemics, even asking the new president, President Trump, to have a pandemic seminar. They had a special war game that they trained the new administration in what we would do and what might happen, with a lot of simulations and things like we talk about today, things that actually happened. We know that Bill Gates, around this same time, was worried about pandemics. He made a TED Talk. He had a similar simulation where he gathered all these leaders together and had them simulate out what we would do in a pandemic. Sadly, about 2/3 of the Trump staff that took the simulation are no longer with the administration now, so we've lost a lot of that knowledge. We also know that he warned Trump personally about pandemics and about the potential problems in his private letter to the president, which the new president made public for the first time ever. But yeah, we've had a lot of talk about this, and I think we're going to have a lot of talk about it in the future. So if you think the response was too much, I think eventually we're going to shift back to normal times, and we'll be able to discuss it and have studies and really understand it. And what we're going to do then is what I think we should all be involved in, is designing the response to the future pandemic. There is a virus out there that's greater than the coronavirus, not just John the Baptist sitting here, but we all know there's more deadly viruses, and if they escaped and if they spread in this same way, we would be in a world of trouble. So what we need is a better response to viruses in the future. We need to codify in law how we want to have the reaction. We need to have it in law. If we're going to have a binder on the shelf, like there's this 69-page binder from the National Security Council called Dealing with the Pandemic that wasn't used. We know it wasn't used. We don't know why it wasn't used. We're going to find out. But in the future, it's more than likely we're going to have a law saying you have to get the binder down. You have to follow we're not going to prepare all these documents to have them ignored again. At least that's my take on it. You could have a different take. Give us a call now at 1-518-600-1949. Are we overreacting? Is it all nothing? Or are we just preparing for the next virus, preparing for the next pandemic? We've got 48 people watching us now. Thanks to the new people for checking us out. We do these shows every day around 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. You could call in now at the numbers or Skype name below. Be sure to give us a thumbs up and to subscribe if it's your first time here. Hit the bell for notifications. I know all the YouTube people say it, and it's all the same thing, and it sounds kind of repetitive. And you're like, even the professional channels like Stephen Colbert and things like that are like, subscribe, hit the bell, hit the thumbs up. But that's how YouTube works. So as much as we don't like to be cliche and just repeat what the other people say, they must be saying it for a reason. So check it out. See if we got any donations. No donations in a while. I think Bitcoin donations are pretty broken. You can also donate with Super Chat in the chat, but Google takes quite a hefty percentage of that. Kind of why we got into Bitcoin in the first place. This magical ability to send money over the internet without any third party to a QR code, to an anonymous address or a pseudo-anonymous address. It's pretty cool stuff. Checking out the price of Bitcoin, it is up 6.24% in the last 24 hours, with a last of 7,160, a high of 7,195, and a low of 6,690. That's $1 for 13,966 Satoshis. The Dow Jones Industrial Average is still up 5.58% just today, with a last of 22,227, above a previous close of $21,052. We checked out coronavirus cases, 1.3 million in the entire world, 71,000 dead. Stay home, wear a mask, like these guys, like the show. One person did. That's effective marketing. 339,000 infected in the United States, 9,695 dead. We talked about Bitcoin news. People are excited about the stimulus.
There is an infinite amount of cash at the Federal Reserve.
An infinite amount of cash at the Federal Reserve. Might just be driving up the price of Bitcoin. Argo blockchain is mining Bitcoin no matter what, just banking the Bitcoin for later. Crypto, long and short, is Bitcoin more like gold or equities? Or could it be that Bitcoin is a brand new thing, not like any of those things? It's either zero or millions. We had to read a whole article to find that out. But at least Forbes got to run the most popular headline in Bitcoin, the price, the price, the price, and a big number. Will the price hit $70,000 before the halving? Maybe in a headline. How high will they say Bitcoin could go in a headline? That's what we really need to know. Bitcoin equities markets rally on signs of hope. We'll see how that turns out. Zappo moves $633 million in Bitcoin for less than a pint of milk. 26 cents. Hi-oh. And we talked about Trump's spirit and his empathy and his decency, and it didn't seem like he had any. So he also doesn't seem to have basic humanity. So I'd work on that. We talked about the news. We've looked at lots of stories. Even had DJing Pizza Cat. That's a strong gif. It even says run dog right there. Run dog. The Overton window has shifted. We must get ready for this new world of science fiction where fast food could give you a brutal and evil virus, where going to the movies or a concert could give you a brutal and evil virus, where even just going to work could give you a brutal and evil virus. Are we going to wear gloves all the time? Are we going to develop vaccines? Are we going to change the way our society works? Are we going to stop touching everything? I think handshakes are out. I'm not sure handshakes or kissing people hello is ever coming back. The window is shifting. Thanks so much to everybody for watching the show. I think we're going to head towards the end. Hopefully you all get a chance to watch Tiger King. Shout out to Norm in the chat. He was one of the early recommenders for Tiger King, but I think the whole country's watching it. I think people can't get enough of Tiger King. It's just crazy. They're out of control. It's a good distraction right now, which is what you need. We still have quite an audience still with us. Maybe we'll find something else to watch. Let's see. We have quite a lot of things you could watch here on the World Crypto Network that you might have not checked out. Let's see what we've got. Checking out the playlists. Playlists are a great place to go on YouTube, especially if you haven't been around a channel for very long. And if it's a channel like this that's existed for 6 years, there's generally a lot of stuff in the playlist. But let's see if we could watch something recent, or maybe let's watch a proof of work interview. I think that's going to be best. Let's see if we can get over to the playlist. Here we go on the right. You can just navigate through the playlist. You can pick any of the interviews you want to watch. It's pretty fun. And I think we're just going to go with the classic. We're going to choose good old Adam Back. see what's going on.
Good
Adam
morning,
Back.
Bitcoin. My name is Thomas Hunt, and this is Proof of Work. Proof of Work is a show about the people behind Bitcoin and how they got here. Today we're joined by Adam Back from Blockstream. How's it going, Adam?
Pretty good. We're at the conference here in Malta, Understanding Bitcoin conference,
Yeah.
on the third day, which is a kind of day where people are helping with configurations that they saw during the main conference on the first 2 days. So I've seen a lot of setups, people setting up the satellite node software, C Lightning, Join Market software, Wasabi software, hardware wallets. There's many of the, a big turnout from the main conference came to the technical setup
Nice.
workshop too.
And it's really good to have all these people together so they can meet in person and talk about things. I know the guys from Slush Pool and Trezor were excited to meet with Wasabi. And, they're different parts of the world, different countries, but you get them in the same room and you can really get something done and figure out what the right features are and what you need to do. So.
Yeah, it's very cool.
All right, well, we're going to start with everyone's favorite and most familiar question. What was your first computer?
So it was a ZX81, which a Sinclair ZX81, which I think was sold as a Timex ZX something in other countries. But basically, it's a Z80A 8-bit microprocessor with 1 kilobyte of base RAM and some ROM, and an optional memory expansion pack to a huge 16 kilobytes. And, it came with a basic interpreter in the ROM, and actually the Z80 CPU is kind of interesting because it has no multiply instruction, so you could only do addition and subtraction, and and bitwise ANDs and ORs and things like that. So
you had to add the multiplication into the line of the code. You had to.
Yeah, I mean, you have to write your own multiplier, basically.
Yeah.
So I know there was some kind of 3D flight simulator game, and there were some articles in technology magazines at the time that the guy had rewritten his multiply algorithm like dozens of times to try and make it just a little bit faster so that the animation would be smooth enough to be usable.
Yeah. That's an incredible difficulty.
So, I mean, the programming of games in that environment was really hand optimized assembly, very close to the limit of what the bare metal could do because the power was so weak, and there's no. The persistent storage of this device is like a cassette tape recorder with I think about 3,000 baud. I think it's a variable bitrate actually, because the zeros and ones take a different amount of time on the tape. So how the baud rate would depend on how many zeros versus ones there were in your binary.
Yeah.
But anyway, you could store things on the tape, and so save your work and load games from cassette tape.
And so is that how you got started? Were you programming games or were you just playing the games?
I got interested in programming. I taught myself BASIC from a small manual that came with it, and then I got interested in what else could you do with it? So I guess initially I was interested to reverse engineer games and see if you could bypass like limits and implement cheat codes, and so there's a I bought the next version of the computer, which is a ZX Spectrum, which had 16 kilobytes space memory and 48 kilobytes expansion memory for a total of 64, and a kind of color screen, but with a funny artifact that you could only have two color choices per block of 8x8 bits, pixels. And so people still managed to make color games that looked reasonable by carefully avoiding putting things with different colors too close together on the screen. And so at some point I implemented a disassembler. I bought a Z80 reference manual for the instruction set and implemented a disassembler in BASIC so that I could more quickly read the code without looking at the reference manual. So there was a time where I knew a bunch of assembly machine code, like the hex for the instructions, because I'd implemented a disassembler. So it's kind of fun, and you were able to do silly things with games, like find the area of the game where the room map was with all the objects, and then clutter the room with a ridiculous number of artifacts and watch it lag when it couldn't render them all fast enough, and things like that.
That's interesting. It's a great way to start, and it's a lot of people talk about tinkering with the games or with the computers. People tell me they wrote up code from the back of magazines and they could see how it worked. I remember going into save files and trying to give my character more money or more attributes, things like that. Mm-hmm. And it was initially really easy, and then kind of hard, and then now impossible. But it was a much more accessible computer environment. Like the code was there, the game was there, and you could really see how things worked.
Yeah, I mean, not always by design, but I mean, you could look at the binary and figure out where the maps were in the code and change them or something. So it's kind of fun. I guess some of the games companies got more sophisticated in their DRM attempts, but I think ultimately, much more recently, well, many years after that, I did some other reverse engineering, which was more encryption related. So I got interested in PGP. I knew what RSA was because a fellow student at the university for his master's degree was trying to parallelize RSA encryption. CPUs weren't that fast, and we had in the university lab transputer network, so something with hundreds of cores on separate processor nodes connected by high-speed interconnect. So you had like an unusual computer with, in principle, a lot of power, but individually weak nodes. So you have to sort of make algorithms that mix communication and CPU. So I got interested in PGP and the benefits for user control and rights by being able to use encryption. And so I was able to, there's a software package at the time called Lotus Notes, and it included encryption, but the story was that this encryption software is backdoored. So inside the software, so it would encrypt your messages with, I think it was a 128-bit key, but you knew that 88 of the bits were encrypted to a key that belonged to the NSA. Like the NSA had provided a public RSA key.
Sure.
And so they had preferential ability to decrypt it. So the remaining key strength after they had the ability to decrypt would be 40 bits, which they could brute force quite easily.
Sure.
So it occurred to me this is quite interesting that this piece of software had a public key that belonged to the NSA obfuscated and inside the binary. So I resolved to find the public key.
Yeah.
So I got a copy of Soft Ice, which is a reverse engineering tool, and I wasn't particularly experienced with reverse engineering on this architecture and this tool, but I managed to find the decryption key. It was like 3 in the morning by the time I finished, and I had like a green screen monitor and like green and black and a glass tube monitor, and the encryption key was formatted as an X509 certificate, so it had an organization name field and like a division or something. But anyway, the person that implemented this backdoor was obviously a programmer who didn't like fully agree with the idea of backdoors, because the organization was Mini-Truth, like the Ministry of Truth from Orwell, and the common name was Big Brother. And
my goodness!
So I got the so it was like a very surreal moment because I was kind of half asleep, and it was like fiction becoming facts, and like very strange. So I like saved all of the keys and tried to work out which Indianness the thing was encoded in, and put it on a website. So it's on my webpage somewhere, this key.
Yeah.
But it's another kind of fun, reverse engineering or technical thing. And actually it was, the software package is enormous. So it was quite difficult to, and you're looking at, hundreds of thousands of lines of machine code with no source code, not many labels. And so I tried to explore, try to trigger the software to do the action of encrypting a message, and then like explore the call tree step, and it was taking a really long time. So finally what I hit on the idea to just let it encrypt and then interrupt it, because the encryption is like quite CPU heavy. And sure enough, I popped up like much deeper in the call stack inside the encryption function. So then I was able to back out until I saw the public key on the stack. And you couldn't find that string by searching the binary, so it was kind of, you know, the programmer's protest Easter egg in there with the Ministry of Truth was, you know, like obfuscated in the binary, so you couldn't find it. So that was fun.
Yeah, that's a really amazing start and a great way to use your first computer. So did you continue with computers from then on, or did you drift away, maybe go into other fields for a while? Or?
No, I stuck with computers. So, you know, there was no computer science at A-level. So in the UK, A-levels is like age 16 to 18. At that time, optional secondary education. And there was no computer science available at that level at that time in most A-level courses. So I did, you know, maths and physics and more maths and economics, but the college had a computer lab with some, I guess they were x86 based computers, and they had a Pascal compiler, so I taught myself Pascal in my spare time, and had some fun with that. And then, you know, I was able to apply for university, and there were starting to be computer science courses at that time, so I took computer science undergrad, and then I did a computer science PhD afterwards as well. So that was sort of the obvious choice for me, because I'd spent, you know, most of my free time learning about computers and assembly programming and reverse engineering and all kinds of fun things.
Well, and you have the ability to do it as a hobby, so it'd be perfect as a work and something to continue, something that you love to do.
So I mean, actually, my PhD was in distributed systems. So, you know, designing algorithms that do coordination or extract efficiency despite network latency. So, you know, so I'd actually coincidentally heard about some of Lamport's work, which is the guy that came up with the Byzantine generals problem and different. It's a kind of abstract statement for coordination problems in computer networks. So there was, and you know, so during my PhD, where I was, you know, doing work on compilers to make use of these parallel computers in a semi-automated way, I became interested in PGP and encryption, electronic cache, and remailers, and this area, and actually spent probably 2/3 of the time of my PhD sort of doing a side meander into encryption and everything related to that. So I actually, after I graduated, I spent most of my career in applied cryptography, like writing cryptographic libraries, designing and reviewing and breaking other people's cryptographic protocols as a consultant or in startups or bigger companies. So that's a kind of transition from distributed computing and algorithms for that into cryptography and applied cryptography. So one of the interesting things about Bitcoin is it kind of combines both, right? Because you've got the peer-to-peer networking, you've got the consensus algorithms that I was aware of from many years ago, and cryptography, which is what I was interested in mostly.
So it seems you had almost the perfect background to go into Bitcoin and to be in this industry. And so I know you were working on Hashcash and you were on the cryptocurrency mailing list. What was it like when Bitcoin came along?
Yeah, so I mean, actually, how I even came to create Hashcash was related to privacy technology, because I was running an anonymous remailer, which is a way for people to have privacy when they're sending email. And you know, one of the things that people were interested in was electronic cash to fund the network resources and servers that these kind of privacy services like Tor and anonymous remailers use, so that you get more users and provide better service and use the money to rent more servers, basically, or do more software development. And it wouldn't be possible to, you know, PayPal didn't exist at the time. It was difficult to get a credit card merchant payment account. And even if you could, it would break the privacy.
Absolutely, yeah. What good is sending a private message if they trace it right back to your bank account?
Exactly, yeah. So therein lies the problem. And so now the other problem was with the remailer. So people were interested in electronic cash, and there was a couple of previous systems. Most well-known was David Chaum's system, and he had a company in the Netherlands called DigiCash, and they deployed a demo system that people could use. And actually people tried to, they said that they would only issue 1 million units, and so people tried to bootstrap a value by selling t-shirts and things. So I participated in that a bit, and probably have on a CD-ROM somewhere some backed up DigiCash coins from that activity, but they went bankrupt, and the double spend database is on a central server. So I presume that that equipment got thrown away as part of bankruptcy. So you couldn't prove whether your coin was spent or not. So the double spend database was gone. So a lot of people drew a lesson from that. That okay, if we really are interested to see an electronic cash system deployed, it has to be distributed. So there were discussions about maybe you could make a peer-to-peer network with broadcast a double spend database. So these ideas were around in probably certainly after 97, maybe even before then. And so the other problem with the remailer was, other than not being able to, these services were funded by volunteers, was that people would spam through it, and it wasn't, commercial spam, like they weren't advertising, low click-through things like Viagra pills or something like that, but they were actually just sending like line noise, big random numbers, and we don't really know why, but they could post it to Usenet, which is a broadcast discussion forum, and use a lot of resources. And I think the people that were spamming were anti-privacy. I wanted to annoy the administrators of Usenet servers so that they would either block or push back against privacy. So I was sort of thinking, well, this is, how do I combat this? And normally you can't. Normally, the way that people were dealing with spam, I mean, they were largely failing, but they would try to deter spam by blocking IP addresses that send a lot of spam or blocking individual email addresses. You can't do that with Remailer because you don't know who's sending it, and that's part of the design statement, right? So it got me to think, what is the real problem here? So the real problem is it's free. So I thought, well, we had the credit card conversation. Oh, that's not going to work. So, okay, maybe we can create a cost without receiving money, right? So then I was like, well, how can we create a cost? So I was reading about hash collisions. I think Dan Bernstein had recently published something that was being discussed on the mailing list about the cost of making a hash collision with MD5, and one of the previous hash, this is before SHA-1, when SHA-1 was the new contender, and MD5 was having problems. So it got me to thinking that, well, if you could find a full hash collision, it would be phenomenally expensive, probably impossible for 100 years. But if you had it, you could give it to somebody and they could verify it in a fraction of a second. So I was thinking, well, it's a very interesting characteristic, and maybe we can make a variant of it that can take a lot less work but still be instantly verifiable. So I was like, oh, I can make a stamp out of this. Right. So I made some crypto sort of design of using hash functions in this way, and that became Hashcash, a way to make a kind of postage stamp to attach to email or use for other anti-denial of service applications, basically. And that's effectively what Bitcoin uses for proof of work. I mean, these stamps would take, a couple of minutes on a computer at the time. And they would have 20 leading zeros in binary. And Bitcoin has, I think, 72 at the moment. And it's exponential, right? So that's enormously more expensive. And actually, there were people who were curious to benchmark their computers to see how fast they could make these stamps, or there was even somebody who implemented using OpenCL, so on a GPU, to make Hashcash stamps for amusement, basically. So I had a kind of digital stamp collection. And some of them were like reasonably big, you know, like 48 bits of. And it took the guy like weeks on like multiple GPUs.
Sure.
And you know, if he used that power to mine Bitcoin in the early days, he would have be sitting on millions of dollars of Bitcoin now.
Yeah.
So this was kind of like this stamp collection wasn't really respendable, but it's kind of related to Bitcoin. I mean, Bitcoin is like a kind of respendable like electronic stamp or work thing. So they're very interesting. So I mean, as to what people thought about Bitcoin who had, you know, been aware of DigiCash and Hashcash. So I mean, there were definitely people trying to construct a respendable electronic cash using Hashcash mining. So there were like at least 3 attempts. So one was, there were 2 sort of similar designs, one from Nick Szabo called BitGold, another one from Weidai called B-Money, and they were not fully buildable. Like they were sort of design ideas, and some parts of them were not fully automated. So they involved like a market or, you know, a set of supernodes in a peer-to-peer network that were making policy decisions. So, and then another more recent. So those were both in. So Hashcash was in '97. B-Money and BitGold were in '98, and then Hal Finney made another one called RPAL, Reusable Proof of Work, and his variant was using an IBM crypto card, which is a tamper-resistant computer that can make digital signatures to prove that the code running in it is what it says, as long as they haven't tampered with it. And you get a signed message from the hardware, which is signed by the manufacturer, and you can verify it. And its rules would say that you can send it a Hashcash stamp, and it would exchange it for a Chorm coin. And because you had some reasonable assurance that it was running this code, you would know that it wouldn't hand out Chorm coins unless you provided the work.
Right.
And then it would also exchange Chorm coins for fresh, anonymous Chorm coins. So that was cool. So it's kind of similar to DigiCash, except you bought coins with Hashcash instead of with, I mean, there was no way to buy them with DigiCash, but DigiCash's eventual plan was to get a partnership with a bank and swap them for fiat currency. So, you know, so the people that were involved in that were, I think, like, including myself, were pretty excited to see that Bitcoin had solved the remaining problems. So, I mean, the inflation control issue. So one of the things that's preoccupying people is that the coins were, you know, you've got mining equipment, and if it says you can create a coin for this much work, computers get faster, and people would go nuts and like print billions of them, right?
Yeah,
and then the value would collapse because of supply and demand. And so they were thinking it's going to be hyperinflationary. How do we control it? And nobody had a good answer for how to do that. And Bitcoin solves it in hindsight, simple way, which is that it doesn't worry about the kind of stable price as such. It just makes a predictable, fully peer-to-peer verifiable rate of supply, and then the market and supply and demand takes care of the rest. So it's kind of interesting, a different way to look at it. And Bitcoin, you know, was implemented, and so answered all of the technical questions that were kind of just ideas. I mean, you know, so Nick Szabo's BitGold, he had a discussion about using a Byzantine generals problem consensus algorithm. So like a lot of the kind of necessary building blocks were thought about, but not figured out, put them together. Yeah. So those people were, well, this is great, like somebody solved it. But I think a lot of people from an academic background who were familiar with DigiCash and were, you know, thinking about things in terms of security levels would say that with DigiCash, you're using RSA encryption basically, and so you could say, well, it's impossible to double spend a coin unless you can factor this big number, and that would take, you know, 100 years or something. So they were kind of annoyed that Bitcoin didn't have this. So Bitcoin does have that kind of cryptographic security for signatures, but in terms of double spending, it doesn't because it's peer-to-peer, and the security margin is kind of 50-50, right? So if the honest players, the honest miners, outnumber dishonest miners, it's secure. So in public key cryptography, there's a huge defensive advantage. The person with the private key can have an enormous amount of security, whereas the attacker is at this phenomenal disadvantage. Whereas in Bitcoin, it's like neck and neck. It's like, you know, there's no amplified advantage.
Yeah.
So that was really it seemed like that was a hang-up for people from the cryptographic community. But, you know, it's the only way they would get this kind of security is by making an unstated assumption that, oh, you trust this server. And Bitcoin gets rid of the trusted server and it's distributed. And if it's not distributed, the DigiCash was a lesson to the people that like Nick Szabo and Wei Dai and myself and others that no, you can't have a central server. So sometimes there's a disconnect between what academic people do and what applied people do. So they will make an unstated assumption or a real world unrealistic assumption. So I think Bitcoin got looked at as, you know, a pragmatic solution, but it took the academics a while to come around to realize, oh, it's actually this is necessary, and then pile in and try to help optimize it. So you've seen a lot more academic interest in improving Bitcoin-related cryptography after a few years.
Yeah, I know Peter Todd told me after he found it, he was really upset that he didn't think of it. He thought that he had all the pieces were right there, but then Satoshi brought the pieces together. And I could see how people would maybe even be a little like jealous or envious, or you have to like work through those feelings to like get back to the actual code and actually it does what it says it does. It solves the problem. Like you said, it's pragmatic. It might not be the most elegant solution, but if it works, it works. So.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's almost a mistake that is a transferable, usable kind of design pattern, which is people sometimes think, okay, I can't deploy this because it's imperfect. So they get stuck on a drawing board and they will never find the perfect solution. Or maybe the perfect solution doesn't exist. Whereas if you deploy something which works, then you can improve it from there. And so, you know, I think there have been a few cases with some Bitcoin-related improvements that have been like that. So, yeah, I mean, that was what I thought, that, you know, okay, the privacy and fungibility isn't so good, but, you know, I'd spent like a lot of years working on cryptographic protocols and trying to, you know, reading and trying to improve on different electronic cache related privacy technology. So I thought, oh great, I can like try and improve it. So that's where I proposed confidential transactions, was like to try and improve Bitcoin's privacy and fungibility.
So after you found Bitcoin and got into it, what led you to start a company or to become more involved in the space?
Well, like everybody, I kind of, you know, I mean, well, I was already in a pretty excited state of mind with the, you know, privacy technology and electronic cache back in late 90s, early 2000s. So, you know, Bitcoin was a kind of return to that level of excitement, or even more, because it was actually deployed and realized, and there were much more people interested and excited at this time. So, yeah, I mean, I just got so interested in it that I couldn't really work on anything else, really. So I had to like leave what I was doing, and initially I was thinking, well, maybe I will do what I used to do quite a lot of, which is cryptographic protocol consulting, so I could do that for different Bitcoin startups. But when I got kind of more and more actively involved and was you know, discussing technical ideas with a number of Bitcoin protocol experts and developers, including sidechains, and we, you know, collectively we thought that was pretty interesting, and that we should try to, you know, start a company to build that. You know, I think while you could typically maybe implement a protocol or a library to make something end-to-end usable, is quite a big undertaking where you need many different skill sets. You know, you need people with experience programming hardware wallets, like embedded systems, and people with user interface experience on different platforms and smartphone development. So, you know, while, you know, a couple of people with experience like writing Linux server software or library software can build the basics, it won't typically be used in practice unless you fill in all the parts. So that's when we thought, okay, really, we're going to need to do this as a company so we can hire people with diverse skill sets. So we started Blockstream. Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. And what are you guys working on in the future? Is there anything you want to talk about now? I know that the sidechains was recently released. Elements is coming on. Blockstream Green has a new wallet now. I just tried it out this morning. It's a nice and very clean interface. Seems good for new users. Is there anything you're working on in the future?
Yeah, so I mean, we're working on, so you mentioned Elements, which is the open source platform that Liquid is built using. And Liquid is a sidechain that's been operating for a little while now, that's has a number of exchange participants in its federated operation. So we are, the Green Address team is working on adding Liquid support to the Green Address wallet. And so we will release an update that integrates Liquid so that you'll be able to use Bitcoin in it, or you'll be able to use Liquid Bitcoin or other Liquid assets within the same wallet. And we're generally, increasing the tool set and usability around different use cases around Liquid, and working on improving the Blockstream satellites, bandwidth and ease of use, install, reliability, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we got to carry one of those around recently, and it's much bigger than your traditional television satellite, I'll tell you that. But yeah, it's a pretty amazing thing. You can set up a dish and then get the transactions right from space even, yeah.
Yeah, so actually big thanks for bringing that thing. So we actually tried to get it delivered from the UK manufacturer direct to Malta, but something went wrong with the credit card payments, so it didn't arrive, and we didn't realize until last minute. So we were very fortunate that you were in Manchester at another conference and agreed for us to have them courier it to your hotel and bring it to Malta as you were going to attend this conference here. So I think without that, we wouldn't have been able to do the live demo. So it all came together. It was kind of, we spent the time from when it arrived until we demoed pretty much flat out setting it up and pointing it and getting the software, have it start syncing the blocks. So it was, but it all came together in the end. So that's cool.
Yeah, it was great. It was pretty amazing when we brought it to the hotel. It was like when the doctors bring a heart in the little refrigerator thing, and they're like, right to the patient. Like it just wheeled right off, and we're like, well, I guess it's gone now. And then, I'm sure the tech guy started pointing it at the sky, and the other guy was typing in the stuff. And the demo came out great, and it was right down to it, though. It was right on the time.
It was right down to the wire, And we didn't have that much like technical equipment. There are more sophisticated satellite pointing equipment, but basically we had like an analog compass. So it was kind of rough setup experience, but Chris got it working, and we were able to demo it live, and it all worked. So it was great. And I mean, it's an interesting piece of tech because it answers a number of use cases. Global reach is a pretty big one. Now there are Bitcoin transactions and blocks that are reaching almost everywhere on the planet. So you can receive the Bitcoin blockchain with no bandwidth cost, essentially, because it's passive, it's broadcast. You just need about, $100 or €100 worth of equipment. Probably 2/3 of that is reusable. It's just a satellite dish.
Sure.
And you need the software-defined radio component, which is itself pretty inexpensive, and some software. So a lot of the decoding is done in software, so it's digital signal processing. So I mean, there is a last mile story. Like, so once somebody, let's say in Africa or somewhere with expensive or unreliable internet connections, has a full node with the data, they have to configure applications to use it. And so Grubles has a pretty nice demo he put together where he has his full node, he set up Electron personal server, he connected a hardware wallet to Electron personal server, he set up a GoTenor, which is a mesh network node, and Richard Myers from GoTenor actually demoed the GoTenor mesh network here at the conference yesterday. So he put the whole thing together and was able to basically receive transactions, securely create them with a hardware wallet, and broadcast them back to the satellite indirectly. So if I go to a mesh, a few hops to the internet, onto the Bitcoin network, and then the satellite is connected to the Bitcoin fiber network, which is a kind of expedited way to transport blocks to miners, basically. So to reduce latency, the Bitcoin satellite uplinks are connected to fiber as well. So it's something that anybody can do. You know, if you want to get low latency access to Bitcoin blocks for some reason, you can connect yourself into the fiber network. So he would, you know, after some seconds, he would see his own transaction come back over the satellite. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. He sent Bitcoin without being directly connected to the internet. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, I mean, it's you know, even other than the sort of emerging markets and global reach use case, it's also practically interesting and useful for people in countries with, you know, relatively inexpensive, high-speed internet that's reliable, because it's good for privacy and security that you can run a full node without advertising to peers on the Bitcoin network what your IP address is. There are people doing network analysis for risk management, and they tend to, you know, we don't know exactly who is monitoring the Bitcoin network. There may be people with nefarious intent collecting information about which IP addresses originate like larger trading transactions. And so you could be exposing yourself to kind of risk that somebody would figure out, okay, this physical address over here seems to have a lot of Bitcoin in its trading, so let's go stake out his house and wait till he goes out and like, you know, try and pilfer it for USB keys or hardware. I think, you know, for privacy and security, it's pretty good. Now, you can achieve something similar by using Tor, so running a full node over Tor.
Sure, but then you have to trust Tor, which is, of course, set up by the Navy.
Yeah, I mean, it is a bit peer-to-peer, but it's, I think even with Tor, Bitcoin uses enough bandwidth that somebody could look at the envelope of bandwidth you're using and guess that you're using Bitcoin. Now, nowadays, Bitcoin uses compact blocks, so it's broadcasting the transactions, and then it sends a kind of summary of which transactions are in the block. So the block is not as much of a bulge. But previous to compact blocks, you could pretty much tell it was Bitcoin because there'd be a big bulge go through. You see like transactions trickling in, and there'd be a big bulge in the connection, and you know, okay, that guy's using Bitcoin. There's a block that's just like, you know, flowing through the network. There it goes. So, yeah, I mean, the satellite would not have that phenomenon because you're receiving the transaction, like the bulk data, in a completely passive way. The satellites that are sending the data are general TV and other industrial use case satellites. So, you know, you'd have a dish pointed at it, and somebody looking at your dish wouldn't know if you're watching satellite TV or receiving Bitcoin data. And you could even, you know, use a cable splitter and do both, actually.
Nice, multi-use.
Yeah, so, yeah, and then, you know, when you come to send a transaction, even if you're using an internet connection, the transaction is very small. So, you know, it would easily mix in a Tor connection with, you know, sending an email or visiting a web page or something. So it wouldn't really stand out so much in terms of bandwidth use. I mean, I guess it also saves you from like bandwidth caps, and, you know, if your connection is kind of medium band, Bitcoin could maybe be kind of annoying. It like slows down your frames per second in online gaming.
Sure.
Causes problems with your video stream or something.
Yeah, you want to get that on a separate network.
Right,
Yeah, it sounds really amazing, and I think it's going to be great for the rest of the world too. We often think about how they're going to use Bitcoin in Africa or South America or somewhere where they might have no connection or not a good connection. And something like this opens up the options to them, and maybe even to, you know, kids learning about Bitcoin and hacking Bitcoin and having access to the network, whereas before they could just read about it, and it's just not as good.
Yeah, I mean, I think also, you know, there has been, you know, in the last few years, some debate about, you know, Bitcoin has many interesting properties, and different people are interested in it for different reasons, and yeah, there's no, every reason is legitimate, but if you know, if things get congested, people start to argue about that their use case that they like is more important than the other use case, and, you know, there's competition for the space basically. So, one way of looking at it is, and Trace Mayer said this a few years ago, is, what feature of Bitcoin, if it was lost, if it didn't have this property anymore, would cause you to lose interest, kind of thing. So what's the differentiating property of Bitcoin, or why do you buy Bitcoin? He expressed it in a kind of financial way. Why do you buy or rent Bitcoin or something like that?
Sure.
So basically the idea that I think, if the Bitcoin network was down for maintenance today, which doesn't happen because it's like a
keeps running,
like 99.9999% uptime network, what would you still make the transaction? And if the answer is I would wait, right? That means you have a requirement for Bitcoin, and you're using Bitcoin in a differentiated way. If you're like, without second thought, I would just go use some other payment, like I go use PayPal, use a credit card, or I use bank transfer, or I pay in cash. Well, then you're not really financially or in a delivered value sense benefiting from Bitcoin. It's just, and there's some people who were very enthusiastic in the early days about Bitcoin being cheap. And, it turns out it's hard to keep that, that as a property when it gets very popular, because, if you push it very hard and you turn out all the parameters, it starts to lose other properties, and then you get into this debate. So, I think Lightning is pretty interesting because it gives some actual, unique advantages over on-chain Bitcoin in providing instant final transactions. The main chain Bitcoin is kind of not very final. If you accept a transaction, it's not confirmed. There's a fair chance that somebody was trying to, they could double spend you.
Sure.
But the thing with broadcasting Bitcoin transactions everywhere is we still need more layer 2 technology, more work on Lightning. Lightning has been growing extremely fast, double digits per week kind of growth rate in the number of channels and channel capacity. And it is a better experience because it's more instant, but it also has its limits, and people are already working on, L2, the ELL2.
Oh yeah,
the kind of 1.5 Lightning with extra features, and so there's no shortage of sort of next step ideas. But I think it's kind of like what we were saying about of deploying a imperfect system and using that for inspiration for how to do the next scaling thing. So I think that by providing Bitcoin data everywhere at low cost, then we can see what ideas that creates and how developers in different countries, aware of their local communities, financial challenges, are able to find creative ways to use it. So, and the other interesting thing about global reach is if you look at the differentiated cases for Bitcoin and you try to enumerate what you think they are, there's certainly, countries emerging market countries with weak or expensive internet connections, infrastructure, are often countries with capital controls, hyperinflationary currencies, or corruption in banking. So even if people could get a bank account, they're not sure if they trust the bank, and they have a reason.
Or even controls on the internet, great firewalls, other things that would block your access or make it even impossible to use your local network connection for Bitcoin or for other PGP, encryption, other activities that might be seen as the government as not acceptable.
Yeah, so I think it's pretty interesting if you want to sort of maximize the delivery of Bitcoin value globally, to get the reach to people who benefit from, permissionlessness, the ability to be self-sovereign because there's nobody they can trust, right? And maybe they don't have government ID. It wouldn't be advisable to trust some other banks they would be potentially interacting with, or they don't have ID to create a bank account. You typically can't.
Or they're too young even. A lot of young people can't even have bank accounts. So.
Right. So, and the point about, access to internet, so here in Malta, we're pretty close to Egypt, and there's a few years ago now where people were leaving Egypt, and some of them landed here in Malta, and during that political turmoil, they actually cut off everything. I mean, they cut off the internet connection, they disrupted the mobile phone networks, and people still need to transact, right? It's in a time of crisis, and presumably the Egyptian pound's exchange rate was in disarray as well, right?
Sure.
So, that's a time where you actually need access to internationally stable liquid money, and yet the internet infrastructure is disrupted. Right?
Yeah,
So the ability to continue to transact in that scenario is actually, that's a really good case for Bitcoin, actually, right? So, I think it's a way to focus on the differentiated value for Bitcoin. So, I mean, people with unstable fiat currencies have, see more value, more direct value to them in Bitcoin. You see people in Venezuela using Bitcoin for similar reasons.
Sure, and that's why when I saw the Cyprus incident in 2013, I was so excited by Bitcoin, because while I don't think the Cyprus people were using it to avoid the capital controls, and they had a lot of foreign money in their banks, and they decided to crack down on it, and maybe it was drug money or whatever, but they also froze all the ATMs. You could only get $100 a day. And the Cyprus people didn't have Bitcoin ATMs or access to it, but I think the idea got out there that it was like, what if they did? They could get their money out for the first time ever. There was an escape hatch from your local government currency fails, but you survive. Mm-hmm. And in Venezuela, we're seeing people can actually mine Bitcoin, they can buy Bitcoin, they can hold it, and then the bolivar is going down, but you still have some kind of a purchasing instrument. You don't just have to go to barter and buying very small liquor bottles and toilet paper and other things you can trade. You could keep some kind of a monetary system even as the entire government system is going down around you. So very exciting.
Yeah, I think the Cyprus case was to do with bank solvency issues. So it's euro-denominated country, but they had some major banks run into financial difficulty and basically become insolvent. And to resolve that is difficult within the eurozone because there's no, a small country has no ability to sort of print money to get its way out of it.
The traditional solution.
And I mean, that's another cost, right? That's an inflation cost, but they can't even achieve that. So they tried to implement a haircut. So basically, everybody with money in the bank suddenly had, some percentage less money in the bank.
Sure.
I think ultimately they didn't do haircuts on deposits below some value because it was politically catastrophic.
Absolutely.
It scared a lot of people about trusting banks in general. And, got people thinking about whether this could happen in a bigger European country in the future.
Yeah. There's an incredible example and an interesting time to get involved. So.
Yeah, I mean, you can see also the former President Obama made some comment about, he didn't say the word Bitcoin, but it's clearly what he's talking about with a Swiss bank account in your pocket. And, for somebody living in Cyprus, if you were, a fairly wealthy individual, you could establish offshore banking. You could establish a bank account in Switzerland or Austria or Liechtenstein or somewhere else, and your euro deposits would be protected in that environment, but, from the haircut. But the minimum cost to do something like that, you probably need like €1 million of investable assets. So Bitcoin really is like lowering the barrier to international financial protection, so you can do it with €1,000 or something. So it makes it much more accessible. So that's a pretty cool use case for kind of wealth protection and asset protection for individuals, and lowering the cost to entry for that to, just set up a smartphone wallet and buy some Bitcoin.
Yeah, I remember when he said it, it was more like an advertisement for Bitcoin than anything else. Because I was like, that's kind of exactly what I want, actually, Mr. President. It sounds pretty good.
Yeah, I don't think he meant it as a compliment.
But I don't think so.
It was great, though. That's exactly, he had a nice way to summarize the use of the value proposition, actually.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Adam, for the interview, and thank you for sharing with us. It was great.
Great.
Good morning, Bitcoin. My name is Thomas Hunt, and this is Proof of Work. Proof of Work is a show about the people behind Bitcoin and how they got here. We're joined by Slush from Slush Pool and Treasure. Hi, Treasure. How's it going, Slush?
Yeah, hello. It's cool. It's cool conference here in Malta.
Yeah, it's been good. It's good to see Tone again, and they have a great workshop going next door. Looks like they're teaching a seminar upstairs. It's one of the last days of the conference, but it's all still happening. It's exciting to be here in Malta. So, Slush, we want to get started with everyone's most favorite and most familiar question. What was your first computer?
Yeah, I remember the first time when I get to computer, and I was like 7 years old, and it was a computer in my mom's job, and I was only type something on the text editor, so because it was completely restricted.
Sure,
and so on.
yeah. If you break a work computer, you get in a lot of trouble for it. I know that.
Yeah. And then we had 1 year later. It was 92, maybe 93. First computer. It was PC.
Yeah.
And it was still restricted, but by these times I was much better than my parents on a computer. So it's a pity that they didn't let me spend more time on the computer. They were too afraid that I will break some things, which wasn't the thing. But by these times I started to program in QBasic.
Oh yeah.
And
so like line numbers and everything.
Yeah. I remember there were 2 demo games, like Nibbles or something like this.
Yeah.
And I started Snake.
Yeah.
And I started to hack it and add some features and so on. Yeah. So it was like the code was there. I studied. I studied it and edit small tweaks and following how it will behave and so on.
Yeah, I've been talking to a lot of people about that. I used to try to edit save games to give myself more money in the game, and then other people said they had to type in programs from magazines, and this was incredibly difficult, and there'd be errors and stuff, but they would see how the game works because they were forced to type it. So like you say, if you make it go speed 100, speed 1,000, you know right away what you changed, and then just trial and error, that kind of thing. And my parents were always afraid I was going to break it too, and I did break it over and over again. I learned how to reinstall Windows and reformat hard drives, and I lost data and I gained data and all that. But I think it is important to break it. And I think part of what I try to lecture out of like my parents or my friends or anybody that I teach, I'm like, stop worrying about breaking the computer and worry more about clicking on everything. If you haven't clicked on it, you don't know what it does yet. Like I taught myself Microsoft Office, and I was just like, I went menu by menu. What does this do? What does that do? Oh, that's what a bullet point is. Oh, that's a list of things. I was like, oh, and I mean, I didn't have any Office documents to work on. I was a kid, but I had this incredible program with all these menus that I've never read, and I was just like, and the same Photoshop, every little program I wanted to learn, I was just like, what does this do? What does this filter do? What does that filter do? And that exploration is what I think computers are all about. So you were already programming and editing games a little bit. Did you continue with programming? Was this just it you're in, like lifetime, or did you kind of drift away from computers?
Well, around when I was like 15, I actually spent a lot of time on gaming, which it was some dark times. And after 1 or 2 years of gaming, I realized that it's not going anywhere. I got bored basically, so I started to dig into computer more. But by the time I already have my personal computer, like that was the first one when the parents had a new model, and I disassembled it completely. Like I was wondering, what's inside? I was always using it as a user or as a programmer, but how it works. So I started to, I don't know, over the serial port, switching bits and so on. And I was wondering how it works. And actually, I completely destroyed the computer. Because when you are not breaking things, you are not on the edge.
Exactly. I did a lot of hardware too, building computers from scratch and upgrading processors and frying motherboards, and you learn by doing, and sometimes it costs you
an unbelievable amount of money for a young kid, like a couple $100 to get a new motherboard because you screwed up the old one. But you had to do it. What were the choices? You had to, like mine was, I plugged 2 keyboards in at the same time because they gave me one that was small and one that was the old 9-pin DIM, and then one had the new small one, and I was like, I could type 2 things at the same time. And it turned out that I couldn't. And that was the end of that motherboard. And I complained to the store, this is junk, blah, blah, blah. And I got a refund or whatever. But I was a kid. What was I going to do? I needed a new motherboard. So yeah, that's great. So you started tinkering with the hardware. And then did you go on to study computers in school? Or?
Well, I went to the college, but it didn't. Well, I did just for diploma. I had a lot of different interests. I was already working and fiddling with open source, some software, and spent programming my own projects, which most of them never were finished, but I learned a lot.
Sure.
So I finished the school, but it was just formality for me. Yeah. And then I actually joined the dark side, and I was working for a bank.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
They have all the money. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty good lesson for me because I was actually on the architecture department. So I learned how the bank works from inside, from the technical aspect. Like there's so many departments and guys doing just one thing.
Sure.
But I was amazed by looking how it works like together. Like some 20, 30 years old systems interacting with modern APIs, batch processing, some strange stuff which is legacy, and everybody is afraid of touching it because there's no documentation and so on. It was really cool experience. But I realized that this is not going, again, it's not going anywhere because I will sit there for like 40 years.
Yeah.
And moving squares from left to right.
Sure, sure.
Waiting years until anything happened.
Yeah.
So I changed the job and I went back to the startup, some small startup which was lean. It was moving much more forward, and doing again some open source stuff. Like I don't think these projects are alive already, and then I actually started to play with futures markets and learn because I was in the bank, so I saw something and so on, and I played with the futures market, and I was actually thinking to become a full-time trader. But then I realized it's just so boring.
I don't think I could take the stress. I'm so bad. Like it goes up, and I'm like, oh, I'm so happy I should buy more, and it goes down. I'm like, oh, I'm so sad I should sell, and I have all the wrong feelings and all the wrong things, and it's just so stressful.
Yeah. So I spent not full time, but like 5 years playing with the futures markets and learning all the bullshit stuff with the technical analysis and all this thing. And I realized that I'm not a guy. I'm not the good guy. Like I need to want to create some stuff, not just looking to graphs. So thanks to my open source involvement somewhere, actually the Zuko from Zcash was the first guy who told me about Bitcoin.
Nice.
So it was April 2010, and I opened bitcoin.org.
Yeah.
And I read some home screen, homepage stuff, and I was like, okay, it's some in-gaming money, probably nothing interesting for me because I'm no longer involved in gaming.
Sure.
So I closed it.
Oh.
And a few months later, Zuko again mentioned Bitcoin in the mailing list, and I was okay. He's a pretty smart guy, so. There must be something more in this. So I opened it for a second time and read more in depth, and I understand. I understand it. It's like financial system. When I was younger, I played with some local Czech completely centralized internet payment system. Like a user. So I had some experience from this, and I was wow, this is completely decentralized and it's open source. It's finance. You know, I had some financial.
Sure. Yeah, you were perfectly ready for this. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. And then I went crazy about this, and I do the Bitcoin for full time. I learned. I'm not a C guy, so I wasn't able to read from the source code. But I learned from all materials around, and it was completely different than today because there were no magazines, there were no wiki pages about Bitcoin. So I learned as much as I was able to. And then, of course, it joined together in my head with the experience from the futures market and the financial background and the IT background. And I was learning about the social perspective of the Bitcoin. And I was like crazy. I was sold.
It's an amazing background to come from for Bitcoin. And of course, I'm always envious of these people who had someone else tell them. Because I mean, I read about it on Slashdot, and I tried to tell my roommate, and he was a computer programmer, and I thought he knew more than me, and he's like, nah, I don't think it's a thing. And we'd seen, you know, Liberty Dollar and E-Dollar and E-Gold, and you know, we watched in this space for long. We used PayPal on the Palm Pilot to send money around. We wanted this internet currency thing, but we just didn't know which one would be the one. So I forgot about it for a few years, but to have Zuko reminding you multiple times is just a great thing to have, and just a real service that he did by getting excited and telling other people, which is what I did later on. I got excited and told other people. But how did you go from tooling around with Bitcoin into starting Slush Pool and Trezor and these big businesses?
Actually, the story was quite similar because I'm not so much like a theory guy. I like to learn things, but I'm learning that to find out how to improve the stuff like for practical use. And when on the beginning with the Bitcoin, I wasn't mining actually. I didn't have any hardware. I had just laptop, and I tried mine once, and it doesn't work. It didn't.
Yeah, you don't get anything, right? I tried it mine. I don't get anything.
It was actually, I was late to the party like 1 month because it was just on the edge when GPU miners started to be a thing. So after studying all the stuff, I was like, maybe I should buy one GPU just to test it out, if it will work. To have the hands-on experience with the mining. So I get one card, and it really generates something. Every day there was a block back then. But the difficulty was ramping up.
Absolutely.
Every day, not every day, of course, but every difficulty adjustment was like to the moon.
Absolutely,
So I was thinking, okay, so I just bought the card and I will throw it away in like 2 months. No. I had to find out how to stay in the game for a longer time. So I was maybe I'm not mining one block per day anymore. So maybe we can join with guys on the Bitcoin talk and mine somehow together to average out the earnings. And I wasn't actually the guy who came up with the specific the low share, low difficulty shares. But I opened the topic on the Bitcoin talk, and everything is recorded there. It's funny stuff. If anybody is really interested in the history, everything is there. Everything is public.
Awesome.
All the messages with the other guys, thinking how it could work, and then I really don't know who came with the idea of low difficulty shares and validating this stuff on the server. But I was like, that's pretty good idea. Just try it on. And after 14 days, I had working prototype, and it worked. I was surprised myself.
It's amazing.
So I made some website around it, and I published it on Bitcoin Talk.
Yeah.
And I really didn't expect it will get so much traction. So it was completely non-profit. It was like I paid one VPS server and tried it out.
Yeah.
And in January, February 2011, it get traction, and actually botnets started to join. And I
Isn't
was
that
like,
great? You build something nice, and then they just have to wreck it.
yeah. And I was wondering, like, okay, so one VPS is not enough anymore because tons of zombies, ten thousands of zombies were connected to the pool trying to mine on CPUs. So after 3 months, I decided to set a fee.
Sure.
So I basically create the whole industry, because then the competition came up, debate and BTC Guild pools came up, and it started. But it was took like 2 months to community for community to realize that this is really something useful, and there's no easy way to steal from them, because it's the pools actually quite well auditable. So it gets traction pretty fast.
That's pretty amazing. It's a big part of Bitcoin history that we mine in pools now, and that you don't just go with one graphics card and get something or nothing. You get like a little share of something every day, and this allows you to actually build a business around, to get more graphics cards, or even get a whole like a server room full of miners, these kind of things. It escalates, and it's interesting to see how it starts. You know, just one person trying to mine, everybody talking about it on Bitcoin Talk, contributing, you know, little pieces here and there, not even sure where the idea came from. Just that all together we were like, we can do this thing, and you set it up, and now we're doing this thing.
Yeah, and the story continues, because in the peak I had around 30% of Bitcoin hash rate on a pool.
And fur coats and diamond necklaces, rolling around in Bentleys.
But actually it started to get to worry me, because I was alone. There was quite a lot of money in a turnover on the pool, and I was so scared to get anybody else access to the pool. So since 2010 or 2011 to 2013, I was maintaining it completely alone. Well, there was one guy helping me with some stuff. By the time he built some trust for me, but he didn't understand it too well. So I was mostly alone on this. And back then it was Wild West, like DDoS attacks, zombie nets, hackers. Now, well, I survived. So it's
which is something. Something.
It's like interesting memory to tell in the interview. But back then, I was really exhausted from this.
Oh, I'm sure. Staying up all night, or it beeps and it's getting hacked. You have to wake up in the middle of the night.
Actually, I lost most of my friends. Because every time they told me, oh, go to the pub with us, I was wearing my notebook, and of course every time I was sitting with my friends, the SMS came from the monitoring, and sorry guys, don't take it personally, but I really have to go.
That's the dedication that leads you to where you are now. I mean, you have to be that into it. I mean, I know I was like reading about it all the time, and you get a message, you read about it all the time, and you do kind of drive your friends crazy. I told them all to buy it and then to get into it, and then they didn't, and I was bummed out, and I was like, what can I do differently? So then I told the internet about it, and then now it's a different group, but we're all way into it.
So I remember I took my notebook and mobile phone even to theater, and I was sitting in the middle of theater, and my SMS, my pager came up. So I to my girlfriend, I said, sorry, I have to leave. So during the theater, I went out, and in the lobby I was tweeting, fucking hackers. Yeah. And after 2 years and 2.5 years, my social life was gone. I was like, friends stopped to invite me anywhere. My girlfriend was like, oh, this is not going to be funny anymore because you are really a zombie. Yeah. So I was like, I have to change something. So I contacted my old friend. He's currently CTO of Slashpool. Yeah. And I told him all the story. Like it's like it was really good business, but most of the people were like the Bitcoin was really small, still so small. So nobody was able, or nobody else was really into like, okay, so I'm going to exit my job and I'm helping with you with this.
It was a big risk to give up that security for this unknown Bitcoin thing.
So it took me like one year to convince him to join the project, especially when he saw that I am all the time.
That's gonna be him. That'll be me. Yeah.
So in 2012, I think 2014, he and his colleague entered into the pool, and they started to professionalize it. They were not alone anymore. Like I was doing everything: research, development, testing, customer support, operation.
That's right.
Everything. So now the Slashpool is like 40 people.
Yeah, it's awesome.
So
take the pressure off you. You get to go to movies now. You know, you can go out to the pub and dinner and anything. Yeah, that's awesome, man. And that's really like, a lot of people talk about that, about being the startup CEO, and they talk a big talk. They're like, yeah, you should spend a couple days in support and spend a couple days in this, but you really did all the jobs yourself for multiple years. And people are like, why is my business not successful? It's like, maybe you're not willing to do that. You know, you need to be more dedicated, like laptop everywhere if you want to succeed. So you really had the drive, man, to not just make a mining pool, but then to keep it and then to make it successful. So that's really awesome that you pulled it through. And then, I don't know, you founded Treasure and stuff, but what are you working on today? Is there anything you want to tell the people, like, no secrets or anything, but what's going on in the future, or just new things you're working on today?
Yeah, so today I'm full-time on Trezor. I'm CEO of Satoshi Labs, which is developing the Trezor. And it is basically the project I was starting just after I leave the pool. Yeah. Because I had to change the topic, because I need some rest from the pool. Yeah. And I met Stick, who is the CTO of the Trezor, and I'm doing it since 2000. Well, the idea came with in 2011, basically, but we started to work full-time 2012, and we incorporated Satoshi Labs in 2013, when we already started the production, so we need some company, and because of the export and shipping and so on, so we started the company, and I'm working on this full-time since then.
And this is a slightly different company, because you actually have to make a physical thing. It's a Trezor wallet. It's not just a pool like software, and you can kind of control that, but you know, it has to have a little case, it has a chip inside, a little screen. It's a very complicated little project.
Yeah. So the original idea was that we will be done like in 6 months, and because we were software guys and really naive, we are really naive software guys. Since then, I understand why so many Kickstarter projects fail. Because we started to dig into the production and digging into all the process like the manufacturing and even exporting around the world. It was like a nightmare. And we have so many issues on the go. Like, we spent 6 months with some company doing the mold for the plastic. And after the 6 months, they had nothing. We spent mostly all the money on it. And they were, so we are sorry. So it's another very long story how we came with the Trezor. It's maybe for another interview.
Sure, we'll have to do it. We'll do a part 2 with more of the Trezor stuff. I don't want to take too much of your time. But
So after 1.5 year of intensive development, it wasn't so much different like doing the pool actually.
But you seem to get really intensely into these projects. I'm saying you get intense into it, you go for it, and then you get kind of bored. Your next project. And it's a really good way to be, I think.
But the reason why I didn't collapse back then is because I was under the stress, even with the slash pool and even with the Trezor. But with the Trezor, it was quite different because in the slash pool, I had financial responsibility for the money in the system. And with the Trezor, in the beginning, it was like a startup, and we were wondering how it will work. We learned a lot of stuff from the manufacturing and so on. But since we ship it, until we ship it, there wasn't any real responsibility for some big pile of money. So
and then there was tons of responsibility. I got my money on a Trezor. He's got his money on a Trezor. We're counting on you, man. No pressure, no pressure. But when I go to the box, I hope there's a little bit of money there. But
but my experience from the pool learned me that I'm not ever going custodial services.
Yes.
So we designed, thanks to this experience, we designed Trezor with as much limited attack surface from our side as possible. As possible, because I knew how it is sleeping with the responsibility of somebody else's money on my own Linux box.
You don't want that, man. We had like a BBS back in the day, and of course the first thing we did is read everyone's emails and everyone's instant messages, and I was like, well, if I did that when I was a system admin, well, they're all going to do that, and it's just such a responsibility to have even just messages, but let alone money, and then lots of money later. So it's good to get out of that, not to be in the custodial business.
So I quite like that I took the experience from all these projects before and designed the Trezor how it is. I'm quite satisfied with it. So you can sleep well. Because,
there you go. It's good.
So the fact that Satoshi Labs is already like 60 people working on the Trezor full time.
Wow.
So I also learned from the slash pool that we can do this like alone. So we already have a really professional team. So I'm really happy guy now because everything is working and I can sleep well. Finally.
That's great, man. It came. We were worried at the beginning, but you made it through to the end, and you've got a company now and lots of people working for you can trust. So I think it's great.
9 years later, and I sleep well.
There you go. That's a great message to end on there. The entrepreneur story, 9 years later. So, where can people learn about what you're doing right now, or where can they follow you on Twitter, things like that?
Twitter is probably the best best place. I'm most active there, and we actually have a lot of interesting projects for Bitcoiners in a pipeline. Like the next release of the firmware will introduce Shamir secret sharing.
Oh, nice.
So we will have a native geographic backups provided by the Trezor device itself. So there will be a lot of stuff like this. We are moving in this area.
Nice.
So Twitter is the best place for following.
Very good. And then just like /pool and Trezor, just Google those, have the websites and everything. So very cool. Thank you so much, Slash, for the interview.
Thank you for inviting me.
Thank you.
That's good.